Rome Emperor even, Dario Sammartino, Berlin Bear, Dominik Nitsche, Paris Aviator Alex Luneau, Igor Yaroshevsky of the Moscow Wolverines, and finally Guodong of the Hong Kong Stars. This first match is going to be kicking off very shortly, so do stay with us right here. And then that will stay the same in the second Six Max match, and then for the Americas Conference, this is what your lineup looks like a little bit later on this evening. Let's see who's playing for the Americas Conference. This evening, it's gonna be Jason Mercier, who ran so well at the WSOP this summer. He's playing for the New York Rounders, the bad boys. LA Sunset's manager, Maria Ho, will be up for them. San Francisco Rush's Kitty Kuo, I can't wait to see her in action. We've got Scott Ball of the Las Vegas Moneymakers, Juan Liu of the Montreal Nationals, who are flying high right now, top of the league, and Byron Caverman finally there for the Sao Paulo Metropolitans. So that is your lineup for both the Eurasian Conference and the Americas Conference. We've got 4 great Six Max matches coming your way this evening here live from the GPL studio in Malta. But we also have our GPL studio in Las Vegas too, and one man who I have missed so very much is there right now. Mr. Eric Danny, how have you been? And keep us up to date. Tell us what's going on with who's at the top and who's at the bottom.
Laura, to be fair, no one told Joe and I that we had to leave, so we've been living here in the GPL arena here in Las Vegas for the one. Joe is actually cleaning the glass on the cube right now, so you might see him later on. Let's not waste any more time, Laura. Let's take a look at some stats. Let's take a look at the Eurasia Conference standings. That conference, of course, is up first today in online action. We see the Moscow Wolverines after a terrific summer. We'll talk about that in a few moments. They are at top of the heap, 122 points. The team to beat right now, 13-point lead on the London Royals, who had the lead for the most part, or at least for a little while there. So London's dropped down. The Hong Kong Stars holding steady as the Cinderella story at 106 points. The Paris Aviators also holding steady at 104. And Rome and Berlin have switched spots in the last few weeks of the summer series. Rome, with a big summer, are now in 5th position. In 6th place are Berlin. Over 100 points still available, Laura. So still a lot of time for these teams to pick up points, as 15 matches are left to play. We've played 30 so far, so let's take a look at who the top scorers are. I think there'll be no surprise at the top, of course. World number 1, GPI number 1. Fedor Holtz is also number 1 in the GPL. There he is standing up top. 12 matches played, 56 points. Anatoly Filatov, the top team manager in the GPL, the man who runs the show for the Wolverines, is also playing pretty well in the GPL, 50 points after 11 matches. Olivier Bousquet, the heads-up specialist, whom we'll see back in action later this week, taking on an exclusive Marc-Andre Ladouceur. It'll be a rematch of Bousquet and Ladouceur, 48 points. Nanonoko at 42. Scott Ball, Nanonoko's best friend, or great friend, through 8 matches, 39 points. We get to see Scott Ball later on today. And Felipe Mojave Ramos, same amount of points as Scott Ball, but Ball has the advantage with 1 extra win following a stellar summer inside the cube.
Let's take a look as well at what happened during the summer. So we had cross-conference action during the summer, and now it's back to playing against their own conference. So talk us through that.
Yeah, one conference did much better in the Americas, but the Eurasia Conference still picked up some points. And as we see here, Laura, the Rome Emperors did move up only 1 spot, but still what they've created now is a race for the playoffs. It did look for a while there to be a 4-team race. Rome is still in it. 33 points, 33 valuable points picked up during the summer series. No shocker to see Dario Sammartino back here in action today. He defeated Pascal Lefrançois of the mighty Montreal Nationals inside the cube. That really was the spearhead to the comeback for the Emperors. The Wolverines, who are holding steady again, have picked over first place here. They're at 30 points. The Paris Aviators, the Berlin Bears, boy, it's kind of ugly that your 3rd and 4th place picked up only 18 points this summer. These teams had a chance at a whole lot more, Laura. The Hong Kong Stars. And boy, I think one of the biggest stories coming out of the summer, Laura, the London Royals, only 12 points. They're lucky that they've only dropped to 2nd position. The good news is that today, Liv Boeree back in action. She has won 3 of her 5 Six Max matches, so that's quite impressive. And Laura, you know I always like to leave you on a fun stat. Well, Igor Yaroshevsky, he's playing today. He finished 11th with partner Peter Bartogov in the tag team event, the first ever tag team event at the World Series of Poker. Well, wouldn't you know it that we have someone in studio that you'll introduce soon. He and his family finished 9th in that event. Final table for him, his father, and one of my favorite people on Twitch, Rocking Rita Little. So to Mrs. Little and to Jonathan and to the father, congratulations on that great accomplishment. Final table for the Little family, always exciting to see. Laura, I will bring it back to you because Joe needs a little push. That cube's a little high.
Joe, make me a cup of tea too, please. Thank you so much, Eric, over in our Las Vegas arena there. We'll hopefully get to see him inside the cube at some point as well. So we'll be introducing you to, indeed, the Mr. Jonathan Little very, very shortly. But first of all, take a look at this. You can now download our app. It is available on iOS or Android, so you can keep up to date with all of the action from the GPL wherever and whenever you are. Of course, you can get hold of some merchandise now as well. Finally, it's available. You can get a cap, you can get a hoodie and a t-shirt. You can also follow us on Facebook, on Twitch, and all on those other platforms as well. So yeah, it's easy to download and easy to keep up to date now with all of the stories, all of the news that's going on with the GPL. Before we head to this very first Six Max match from the Eurasian Conference, it is now time to introduce Roland Boothby, one of our commentators and our special guest for the next 2 weeks. It's Las Vegas Moneymaker, Jonathan Little.
Thank you, Laura. My name is Roland in the Boothby. I am the new commentator here on the GPL. Those of you wanting to see Griffin Benja and Sam Grafton, going to have to disappoint you for the next 6 weeks. Obviously, the run good of the GPL took effect on both of those guys. Griffin Benja making the November 9 at the World Series of Poker, just when you thought that achievement couldn't be improved upon. Sam Grafton, 26th at EPT Barcelona.
Great run.
Great run by both guys. Anyway, we found this guy hanging around on the beach of Malta, just as his team's struggling at the bottom of the Americas conference. We found him in Malta. Thanks for joining us, Jonathan.
Well, thanks for having me. You know, when your team's doing poorly, you go take a vacation.
Yeah.
And leave it to Scott Ball. He gets all the points for our team anyway.
Right, Jonathan. Eurasia Six Max. We got Liv Boeree. We got Dominik Nitsche. We got Dongguo. We got Igor Yaroshevsky. Played with any of these guys?
I've played with a few of them a lot, and then a few of them not at all. So the first person is Liv Boeree, who I've played a pretty good amount with. She has been playing for a relatively long time with a pretty good amount of success. So I'm looking forward to seeing what she does today.
Obviously, the Berlin Bears are the team that's propping up the Eurasian Conference. They've sent in Dominik Nitsche to play tonight. Do you think it's a wise decision by their team captain, Phil Grusin?
I do. Dominik is one of the best players in the world. He is well known to play a really solid, strong style versus great players, but also he knows how to get really out of line and to take advantage of the weaker players whenever there are any. There aren't very many in the Global Poker League, though. But he always does fantastically well, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he does today.
Yeah. Now, Dominik's obviously probably the sort of star of the show in terms of the players we've got playing tonight. You can see there 6.5 million in cashes. He was up to number 4 on the GPI at one point. He's just a real, stalwart of the tournament game. I think he, hangs around a lot with a lot of other great players. He hangs about in a good set with, Max Silva. I think he lives up in Edinburgh with a lot of good German pros too. Another player who already have to put in a good performance is Dario Sammartino. The Rome Emperors are struggling second bottom in that table, and Dario's really been one of the stars of European poker over the last few years. Working his way up from kind of the really sort of the low buy-ins in Europe, the $500, the 1,000 euro buy-ins, in Italy and in Slovenia, and now he's playing the highest level. And really doing well, putting a lot of deep runs in the big high roller tournaments. As you see there, 3.6 million in earnings, highest point of 7 on the GPI. Any experience with playing with Dario?
I believe I've only played with him one time. I don't quite remember the experience, but anyone who starts off relatively small and grinds up over a relatively short period of time, they're often doing something right, and he's clearly not afraid to take risks and play at the highest level. So good job for him.
Also got Alexandre Luneau, who's probably not one of the better known No Limit Hold'em players in the GPL. He was Fabrice Soulier's wildcard pick. He's probably best well known recently for his appearance in the high stakes documentary Nosebleed, where he was a real sort of prominent feature in that documentary, which won a European Poker Award. Now he's put in a lot of good live performances. Probably not well known for his No Limit Hold'em, but he put in a pretty good performance in the 10K heads up at the WSOP. But definitely known for his mixed game kind of credentials. But a player that you think can have an impact for the Paris Aviators in this segment?
Definitely. You will see that a lot of the very best mixed game players in the world are also incredibly good at just poker in general. And formats like heads up and six-handed sit and goes effectively are very good formats for people who are not necessarily no limit hold professionals, but just poker professionals. They can translate their skills very well to these games, and I would not be shocked if he wins the game despite his relatively few live no limit hold'em results.
Okay, we've got Igor Yaroshevsky also playing for the Moscow Wolverines. Now, Moscow was a really kind of running away at the top of this league, 122 points from 30 games. They're looking in really good contention for the playoffs. Now, Igor Yaroshevsky is a player very well known on the European scene, probably not as well known across the pond, but he's been up to 27 on the GPI, 79 results. That's a pretty good number. This is a guy you always see deep in tournaments, 2 victories, but 79 results in around six or so years, really showing that he's a kind of a player with staying power on the European scene. You see a lot of guys disappear off the scene, but he's just constantly there, putting in deep runs. Got Guo Dong, also the final player in this 6-match lineup. Probably the sort of more kind of unknown element of the Eurasian Conference, the Hong Kong Stars, and Guo Dong is probably one of the lesser known players within the Hong Kong Stars. But, he's put in 600,000 in earnings. Very much one of the unconventional players. We've seen some sort of entertaining and unusual performances from Guo Dong, but he should be an exciting player to watch in the upcoming games tonight.
While 600,000 in cashes may not sound like a lot, his first cash was only 3 years ago, and from what I can tell, he plays primarily in Hong Kong and
plays at Hong Kong
area.
in the Far East.
And those are actually very good results. Also, assuming he just started playing poker recently, he's doing really well. So I'm expecting to see what he does. He looks like a crazy ninja warrior, and I'm excited.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Well, that's the lineup, folks. We're going to go to the game. Well, we're going to go to the game briefly. We're just waiting for our players to get ready. Let's have a prediction, Jonathan. For this 6-max.
I think the obvious prediction is Dominik, but I'm going to go with Alexandre Luneau.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, he's performed well on the GPL so far. Picked up a lot of points. Picked up 64% of the points that were available to him.
There you go. Pick the guy who wins the most points.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go for Dario Sammartino. He knows his team are down there at the bottom fighting. Obviously, the Rome Emperors were expected to do strongly after Max Pescatori was awarded the first pick at the draft. He's going to be under pressure, to bring those teams up into the playoff spots.
So do you think he's going to thrive under the pressure or collapse?
I think Dario Sammartino is going to thrive under the pressure. He's he's really shown his colours on the last few years on the European circuit, and I think he's going to be a real asset to the team tonight. We're about to go to the game, so without further ado, I think we're going to get to the action. Well, sorry, folks. We're just waiting for the players to be ready. Going to have 2 players on webcam tonight, and we're ready to go to the game.
We have a new table.
Yeah, we have a new table.
It is as if they are in the cube, but the online cube. Right off the bat, we see Liv folding Queen 10 offsuit from the hijack seat. Seems like an okay fold, really. Whenever you're playing against good players, you probably want to be folding that. Against weak players, you can kind of do whatever you want.
Okay, and those of you who watched the first phase of the online element with the 6-max will know there's a lot to be gained by not busting first, because 5 players out of 6 will be awarded points. So you might see some tight play in the early stages. Do you agree with that strategy, Jonathan?
Maybe not necessarily incredibly tight, but certainly nothing ridiculous. I believe the way it works is first place gets 7 points, second gets 5, third gets 3, fourth gets 2, and fifth gets 1.
Yeah.
And then 6 gets 0. Oh, hello, Liv.
Hello, Liv Boeree. Okay, Guo Dong taking a flop with Dario Sammartino here. It's gone king high. Both players have missed this board. Guo Dong with the biggest piece at the moment. Got the gut shot and the backdoor spades. I shouldn't see this plot getting too inflated. I'm sure Guo will probably take a turn card here.
Yeah, you definitely have to call in this scenario. A lot of players fold when they don't have a pair or better, but here he has the backdoor straight draw, the backdoor flush draw, and ace high, so all those could very easily be good. Seems like a pretty good spot to go ahead and call. So now, do you think he's going to bet
Looks like
the turn?
Dario's going to check his showdown value. Guo's going to take a stab.
This is an interesting spot on the turn for Guo, because I'm not sure he's going to get very many better hands to fold by betting, but at the same time, he may be able to get them to fold on the river with an additional bet. Wow,
Okay.
Dario folds middle pair. I'm shocked at that.
That's pretty tight laydown by Dario. Do you think he has an impression of how he thinks Guo's going to play in the early rounds?
He may think he's going to play overly tight, but I mean, anyone who is a samurai wizard, you have to assume that they're going to be getting after it a bit. So, I don't know. I probably would have stuck around at least for one bet. And actually, that's one of the hands that will often get barreled off with a river bet. So,
I'm not going to defend that.
Yeah, we got Liv on the mic.
Not against the Sammartino under the gun.
Hi, Liv.
you will probably see throughout this that a lot of players have various defending ranges and defending strategies. Some players defend incredibly wide, and others defend a little bit tighter. Like, I would not be surprised if many people call and defend that 9-7 offsuit Liv just had. But, you know, I guess an under-the-gun razor is never really that bad, too.
Sandwich between two very good players here, Dominik and Dario.
Great hop flop here for Dario.
Play with each other.
This is a pretty rough board for Dominik because this big card, little card flop should connect pretty well with a lot of big blind defending ranges, assuming they're not defending incredibly wide. But if they're defending really wide, then it's usually okay just to bet and try to pick up the pot. It's always important to try to figure out what your opponents are defending with. If they're defending with only reasonable hands, well, this board hits reasonable hands pretty well. But if he's defending, you know, king 2 offsuit, it's not so bad just to bet small and pick up the pot. And also make it to where you don't get blown off of your hand. Obviously here, Dario has a set, though. He's not going to be folding a set. You think he's going to call or raise?
I think he's going to call here.
The one reason not to call here is Dominik bets so tiny.
Yeah.
And this is something you'll see a lot in the Global Poker League, where when people get a continuation bet small, it gives them a very good price on their bluff. And for that reason, if you do have a value hand, you're often kind of forced into raising, because on Queen 9-3 with 2 suits, you don't really want any club or a jack or any other card like that to peel off.
Luneau's raised under the gun here with their king jack. He's going to run into some action behind him. Certainly 2 good hands for Dario and Guo in the blinds. I think we might see a 3-bet from Dario here.
One reason not to 3-bet this is because Luneau raised under the gun. I'm a pretty big fan of not 3-betting under the gun razors 6-handed, but you know, there's nothing wrong with it with ace queen. Ace queen's certainly a fine hand. Notice he does get pocket 7s to fold from Guo.
Think that could have been a good spot for a cold call? Pretty
No,
deep.
I'm not a big fan of cold calling 3-bets.
So ideally, for me, the best outcome right now would be for Igor Yaroshevsky to bust out early and not get many points, because we're in second place behind the Russians and, behind the Moscow Wolverines. So winning lots of points and then winning 0 points would be a great outcome.
Liv showing she's aware of the standings in the Eurasian conference. Pretty interesting flop here.
This is another board where Liv should be checking behind a lot, because people defend the big blind and the small blind. Well, the big blind in particular, with a bunch of just smallish type cards. So Luneau should have something on this board a lot of the time. Turns out he actually has something really good. Well, Luneau leads. The main time...
Not my flop.
The main time to lead here is when you do not expect Liv to continuation bet very often, and like I just said, you should not really expect her to continuation bet too often on this board. So, you know, leading certainly has merit. The problem is just hard to get a ton of action.
Interesting spot here for Guo Dong. Bottom pair with a backdoor heart draw.
I think he could go either way between, well, really calling, folding, or raising. If he thinks
Okay, going to go for the aggressive approach, which isn't going to surprise some viewers after some of the interesting lines that Guodong was taking during the first phase of the online element.
I don't really mind this check raise, mainly because he does have a lot of cards he can barrel on the turn, like hearts and aces, and maybe even stuff like a 3. Obviously, this is not going to work out too well for him, but this is an okay play. I mean, the problem with check calling the flop is that pretty much every turn card is bad for you. So whenever every turn card is bad for you, besides, I mean, hearts, like hearts give you just a marginal draw going to the river at that point. He's basically taking his marginal made hand and turning it into a semi-bluff.
Oh, this turn smashes Luneau more than it does Guo.
Guo leads here for a pretty large bet, almost 3/4 pot.
I agree with Liv's assessment there that Guo should probably not be check raising too many hands with a 4, because like 7-4 just want to call, and 5-4 probably just want to call, but he does. Let's see if Guo goes for the big bet, the all-in, or a smaller bet, or no bet.
I bet third pot here.
So now does Luneau shove? He only loses to 9-8, right? But he has to ask himself, will Guo only call with exactly 9-8 if I shove? And I don't know. I think you could easily get looked up by a 4. It's pretty hard for your opponent to have a 4, though, given you have a 4 in your hand. You also have an 8 in your hand blocking 9-8. I imagine I would probably shove in this spot, but I would not. Like, if you just call there, I don't think it would be the worst thing ever, especially if you don't know so much about Guo's strategy. Because for all we know, Guo's just going to show up and be very, very tight. But I think there is some value to be had. Maybe he calls off with a set. Maybe he calls off with 2 pairs. Maybe he calls with straight, the 4 straight, the straight with a 4.
Okay, Luneau takes the early chip lead there with that pretty nice pot. Guodong down to 13k.
It's a tough loss there, but it doesn't necessarily mean he's out or guaranteed to take 6 or anything like that. So there's still a lot of play to be had, as you will know if you watch a lot of the Global Poker League 6-handed games.
Dario going to kick it up with 6-8 suited.
Guodong doesn't make much sense to have a straight there with the hands they call out the small blind. So it could be a pretty sweet spot to turn a 1-pair hand into a bluff, which he might have had.
Those of you asking on Twitch about the commentary duo, I'm Roland Boothby. This is Jonathan Little. Griff and Graf, who have gone on to big things in the poker world since the first phase of the GPL Run Good, we're calling it here in the studio.
That's why I'm here. I'm hoping to get some run.
Yeah, Jonathan Little's going to take the world by storm once he departs Malta in 2 weeks.
So notice here, well, gets a little bit more interesting. Luneau raises. This is actually a pretty good 3-bet spot with most of your playable range from the small blind, because you don't really want to let Dominik call one more big blind with a very wide range. So this is a situation where you should be 3-betting a lot of your playable range, including stuff like pocket 4s that you may traditionally want to just call. And now Dominik puts in the 4-bet with the nuts.
Dominik getting frisky.
He's not getting frisky, Liv. He's got it.
It's always interesting when you see this kind of action go down. Buttons raise, small blind 3-bet, which you kind of expect to happen a lot of the time. And now Dominik 4-bets. You always wonder if that guy's just getting out of line. But I think, unless your opponent's known to be absolutely crazy, most of the time they're just going to have it. Or, it being something like pocket jacks or better, or ace king or maybe ace queen. Of course, Dominik could be doing this with any ace, like ace 3 offsuit, as a cold 4-bet bluff, and it would probably be a pretty sweet play.
Has Igor got all the options available to him here?
I don't think he should be 4-betting very often.
Okay, let's it go.
I think it's either fold or call there. And if you think your opponent has exactly a big pair, calling's actually not so bad, because you're getting very good implied odds, but you are out of position, so it's kind of difficult to realize those implied odds. If you are going to be calling with a hand out of position, usually small pairs are better than suited connectors. And that's because with a small pair, you know on the flop if you have the nuts, whereas suited connectors flop marginal draws a lot of the time.
Dario's raised the queen 10 off from under the gun. Dominik's just going to call here on the small blind.
Swing and a miss.
Liv defends the 9-2 suited. Not going to lose any more chips in this hand.
So remember there, Liv folded 9-7 offsuit earlier, but defended 9-2 suited here, and that's because now the pot is 3-way. She's getting better pot odds. And also, she's not really trying to make like top pair in this spot. She's more so trying to make, a flush or something like that. Strong 2-pair type hands. So notice Dario check back the flop. That's a spot where if you bet and get called or raised, you're often pretty unhappy. But if you check it through and then face a turn and or river bet, you can very easily stick around. I think Liv should probably just fold here. It's kind of nasty that she turns some equity, but if anyone bets the river, she's just very unhappy. So that's a good spot to get out of the way.
Dominik has all the jacks and queens in his range quite comfortably.
So now the board reads.
9.
Jack, queen,
Facing
9,
a
queen.
river bet quite often.
Can Dario get any value
I've
here?
got Dario behind me. Meh. Get out of there.
Dominik elects to check his ace high. Probably, well, I'm assuming he's going to check fold to a river bet. There's no real point in calling here, I don't think. So the question is, how much does Dominik bet with his full house? Does he bet very large, hoping to get called by a jack? Or does he bet smaller, hoping to get called by ace highs? I think in that spot I would probably go a little bit bigger, just because Dominik could conceivably have a jack that he checked the river.
If you want to get in touch with us, folks, at GPL on Twitter, use the hashtag GPL to get in touch with us. Tell us what you like about the stream. Tell us what you don't like.
All right, so we have Guodong raising under the gun with ace-3 suited out of his 13,000 chip stack. This will probably get through. No one else really has a good hand unless someone decides to get frisky. Dario's in the big blind with 9-6 offsuit, debating whether or not to defend. And this is another example of a spot where I think most people will just fold with a hand this bad. But, some people do elect to defend pretty wide. So we see Dario here defending versus Guo with a pretty bad hand. But that's just because, again, he's getting pot odds, and he thinks he will realize enough equity in the spot to stick around. King Jack 7 flop 2 clubs. He just check folds to a bet.
Is this the kind of texture you always see betting, or are you ever checking after missing, like in the way that Guo did?
It depends on, again, what you think about the defender's defending range. As their range gets wider, you should probably be a little bit happier kind of blindly betting any 2 big card board, just because that should be so much better for you. And if they're defending mostly reasonably strong big hands, you have to be a little bit more cautious, because that should hit them more often.
It's going to kick things up to 800 on the button with a 10-9 off.
So now Dario's in the small blind with king 8 offsuit. I assume he's going to fold, but 3-betting is perfectly fine here. Kind of similar to what Igor attempted with the pocket 4s earlier. And now Guo in the big blind with king 2 offsuit. This is the type of hand I really don't like to defend so much from out of position against someone who is good and aggressive like Liv is.
If you guys are experiencing any difficulties on the technical side of things, they are being worked on by a production team. I think some of you are saying on the Twitch that there may be audio only at the moment. We're working our hardest to get this sorted for you.
Pretend like you're watching a baseball game or listening to a baseball game on the radio. Does anyone actually listen to the radio anymore? Well, here we are. We're listening to radio.
Rewinding to the days of radio.
Let's try to make it as exciting as we can. Liv folds queen 10 offsuit and the cutoff again. Liv does not like queen 10 offsuit, apparently. Dario on the button with pocket 5s. He will certainly be opening. He does make a min raise. Now Guodong with king 5 offsuit in the small blind, spot where he could certainly defend or he could 3-bet or fold. But Luneau decides to see a flop in the big blind. Heads up action with king 7 suited.
Pretty good flop for Dario. Only 1 overcard to the 5s.
This is a spot where the hand like pocket 10s on jack 4-3 you could check behind, because you're not really so concerned about overcards coming. But with pocket 5s on jack 4-3 very often do want to bet. So he bets and Luneau actually defends with king 7 of diamonds with just a backdoor flush draw. Kind of a wide defend, but
Do you think you have
not too
plans
insane.
for later in the hand? We'll see.
I don't think you necessarily have to have plans if your opponent bets small enough on the flop. Just because your king will get there sometimes, your diamond draw will come in sometimes. And that is one of the adjustments you have to make when your opponents are continuation betting small, like a lot of these players are doing in the Global Poker League. And that's something that a lot of players are not properly adjusting to in the standard game, because they're used to people betting pot or 3/4 pot, and then you don't really need to defend too often. All right, so here folds to the cutoff. Dario, he raises with king jack suited, and Guo picks up ace queen with his 40 big blind stack on the button. He does elect the 3-bet, so Dario makes it 660. Guo makes it 1770 from the button. So now Dario's in a pretty nasty spot. If he perceives Guo to be one of the more splashy players who may do something very out of line, then I don't really mind defending in this spot. Mainly just because your hand is okay. But you have to be careful with King Jack, King 10, Queen 10, Queen Jack, because very often when you do flop a pair, it's going to be dominated. And you really don't want to be dominated when your opponent's starting to get somewhat short stacked because you just have to pay them off.
Guo flops top pair, top kicker here. A few backdoor opportunities for Dario.
Well, it comes Queen 6-2.
He's going to let it go.
Remember, we're on radio today. Queen 6-2, and with one club, Dario has King Jack of clubs, and just check folds to a relatively small bet, which is probably just smart. There, he's not getting such good implied odds from out of position with his junkie draw.
This hand could be disastrous for Guodong. He's in the cutoff with 10s, and he's going to run into the kings of Igor Yaroshevsky in the small blind, and neither of them are particularly deep. And depending on how this hand goes down, we could be seeing the end of Dong Guo here.
Yeah, so Guo raises from the cutoff to 2.5 big blinds. The blinds just went up to 200, 400. So he made it 936. Igor 3-bets to 3,072. And this is a pretty tough spot for Guo. I mean, I imagine he's just going to be all in most of the time. He may click it back to 5,800. He may call, but I think the default player is to just shove.
Okay, folks. Got our first all in.
Jeez. Unlucky for
6-7
Guodong.
deuce on the flop. Guo's going to need help on the turn and river here, guys, or he's going to get a big fat donut in the first.
Don't want to
Eurasia
go to the
6
Russians.
max. Ace on the
Yet.
river. Igor Yaroshevsky victorious with the kings against Guodong's 10s. Guodong's going to be out of here.
Tough run for Guo, and that kind of shows what you open the door for whenever you lose a pretty big pot right off the bat.
It's nice to get the 1 point. I don't know what accent that was. Italian. Who knows?
Liv's doing a Dario Sammartino accent.
For Igor, though.
For Igor.
All right, so here we have Igor. We're now 5-handed. Igor is now the chip leader with a nice 39,000 chip stack. He opens the button with ace-3 offsuit. Dominik considering getting frisky with 4-2 suited, but he does let it go. And now another spot where Liv should probably defend with this 9-6 offsuit. And it looks like she does. Tough flop. And this is one of the things where good players are capable of getting away from their marginal made hand somewhat quickly, whereas a lot of amateur players feel like they must stick around. Flop comes ace-6-2, so Liv has middle pair, Igor has top pair. Igor does the kind of standard bet of betting small in that scenario.
10 of spades, hits the turn.
And this is probably where Liv should just fold to another bet if Igor bets, but Igor plays it a little bit, I'm not going to say cautiously, more like just cagey, just good, solid
Igor's
poker.
turned to 10 a lot here.
And Liv does assess that Igor has a lot of marginal made hands, mainly 10s, and also some bad aces, as he does. Now Igor's going to get a value bet in, and I think Liv's probably going to fold. The river was an 8. She's not really thinking Igor's going to bet too many 8s, but she's probably going to think that he's not going to be bluffing too often with king-queen, for example.
Bad ace.
Wow, Igor bets 500 into 3,300.
So cheap.
This is a spot where if you just know he has it every time, you can fold, but I don't think you can just know he has it every time.
7.5 to 1.
As Liv says,
Liv pays it off.
getting 7.5 to 1, it's
Good
not
for you.
so bad to call.
Dominik looks like he'll let go on the button with the 6 deuce off. Fold around to Liv in the small blind, 10-6 of spades.
So this is a spot where I don't really mind having a very wide limping range if you think the big blind's going to defend very well, as I do expect a lot of the Global Poker League players to do. If you are going to raise, I don't even mind a little bit bigger than what Liv makes it. Liv makes it 1,200 for 3 big blinds. I think even 3.5 or 4 big blinds from out of position with deep stacks may be ideal. And like right here, we see Dario defending with 6-5 offsuit, right? And that's just because he's in position and he's getting 2-to-1 pot odds. So will he win this 33% of the time in position? Will he realize that equity back? And he probably will. So flop comes 9-7-5, 2 clubs. Liv has a gut shot. Dario has
overcard.
a gut shot and bottom pair. He's certainly going to stick around here. Probably with a call. 3 on the turn, giving both players a double gut shot now.
Now we have an open ender.
He's going to double barrel this one, it would seem.
Well, I think Liv has to expect to get called
Let's overbet this.
if she bets a lot. She's talking about overbetting, though. That's pretty sweet. She does, well, not really an overbet. 5,900
She's
into
over by
5,500.
400.
Yeah, that's a little bit
They all
different. Different than betting like 10,000, right? So she is making a big bet, hopefully to get Dario off of all hands like ace-5 or pocket fours or something like that. But I think Dario's going to stick around with any pair plus draw here, and he's not going to fold any flush draw. So I'm also not sure he's going to be floating the flop with stuff like queen jack, but if he does, I think a smaller bet maybe would have worked better. But then she gets there on the river, kind of, with the 10 of clubs. She's going to win the hand, but that's not really the 10 you want to see on the river. Because now value betting is...
I don't think I can really shove this for value, because
The pot is 17,000, Liv has
9
13.
eights and so on probably can't call the flush draws got there.
Yeah, I think Liv needs to check, and this could conceivably be a check fold on the river, as silly as that sounds, because the obvious flush draw came in, the 10 of clubs, the front door flush draw came in. And also...
Dario's more than capable of turning his 5 into a
gross.
bluff, and that's what he's going to do.
And he does. He goes all in. Pretty sweet play. I don't know if this is going to work or not, but I think it's a pretty sweet play. It's kind of odd to try to figure out Liv's range when she overbets the turn and then checks the river. Because it's often going to be very strong hands or nothing. But, I mean, maybe he thinks it's a lot of middle strength value hands like 8-5 or 8-7.
Beating much.
So Liv could conceivably fold this.
Miss flush draw, turn.
You always want to ask yourself, what do I beat? You don't just want to say, well, I have top pair, I'm calling. You want to make sure there are plenty of hands that you do beat.
Any flushes, it grows.
Tough decision for Liz. She must feel a long way away from Burning Man right now.
Ugh.
She does
She
make
lets
the
it go.
fold. Wow.
God, I hope he's not bluffed me there.
Sweet play by Dario there. I mean, Dario correctly realized he's not winning on the river very often if it goes check-check. Because he probably thought Liv had a lot of random 8s and random 9s with draws. And those hands may conceivably fold. And sure enough, he got her off of an even better hand, a 10.
Yeah, really nice play from Dario there. He assessed that his 5 was no good. Put Liv to the test. Dario's a very capable player in these spots. He has all the moves in his armory.
It's important to realize when you don't have much showdown value, even when it kind of looks like you do. And right there, Dario does beat ace highs, but is Liv actually playing any ace highs that way? I mean, probably not. So Liv usually has a better hand. So now the question becomes, can I bluff Liv off some of these better hands? And Dario decided he could, and sure enough, he could. So here Dario limps small blind with 9-3 offsuit, which I don't really mind. I think it's okay, especially if you don't expect to get raised too often. And you always want to try to assess what the big blind's strategy is going to be when you limp. A lot of big blinds will just check every time unless they have a really good hand or a really bad hand. Other players will raise a lot of medium strength hands like Alexandre just did with 10-8 suited. So you don't want to be limping if you're going to be getting raised a bunch. You don't want to be limping with garbage, I mean. So here Dario opens to 1,200 from the button, and Luneau 3-bets from the small blind with pocket 8s with 34,000 effective stacks to 4,000, and Dario just folds on the button. I think that's a little bit snug, being in position. Luneau did make it a little bit big, which will often induce the player on the button to fold, which is actually what you want when you're out of position.
The fact that he's playing against the other chip leader at the table be a consideration?
Well, Igor's actually the chip leader with 40,000.
Yeah.
I don't think it's much of a consideration in position. Obviously, we're getting this situation where Liv's somewhat short, and no one wants to go broke before Liv, but I think being in position there is probably a good enough reason to call. Unless he just thinks Luneau's going to be tight. I mean, I assume these players have observed some of these players in their previous Global Poker League games. I mean, I know I study all my opponents when I'm playing, and maybe he just knows Luneau is on the tighter side. All right, so here we have Luneau raising the button. Igor 3-bets again from the small blind, king 10 offsuit. And now Dominik cold 4-bets again. Second time this has happened. Both times Dominik has had the effective nut hand. Here he has ace-king. And Igor has this nasty king 10 offsuit that he should probably just fold. Even getting good odds. So here, Luneau made it 1,300. Igor made it 4,400. Dominik re-raised to 7,500. So only 3,000 more. So Igor's getting great pot odds. But great pot odds out of position with a hand that's almost always dominated is not a good spot to be.
Bet by Dominik.
Do you think Igor's hand's worthy of the thinking time that he's using up here?
Hard for
Or do you
Igor
think he's
to
just
really
thinking,
do
knowing
much
he's going
over
to fold?
this.
He's considering going all in.
It doesn't
because-
look like he has much fold equity.
Well, if he goes all in,
Dominik is perfectly capable of doing this with absolute bullshit, though.
well, that, as Liv just says, this is a spot where Dominik's not going to want to call off with Liv being so short. But this is a spot, because Liv is so short, perhaps perhaps Dominik's only doing this with a nut hand, or primarily doing this with a nut hand. You have to be very careful when you are the person 5th in chips, because, I mean 4th in chips, whenever there's someone who's much shorter in 5th place, as Liv was there, because you really don't want to be going broke before Liv goes broke. All right, so here Igor raises the 2 big blinds on the button with King 7. Liv has Ace 8 offsuit in the big blind with 21 big blinds. You can go either way here between calling or shoving. I don't really like the 3-bet small with this hand, because if you 3-bet small and you get shoved on, I don't really know if you should be calling off or not versus Igor. You want to be doing that play when you have a very clear idea of what you want to do. So she does elect to just flat. And she'll probably end up getting bluffed off of this pot, I imagine. Wow, so Igor checks back. Interesting. King, Queen, Jack 4, 2 hearts.
Decent turn.
Liv makes a pair on the turn with an 8. Now she can at least call 1 bet. Igor just keeps checking, though. I'm not a big fan of this play by Igor. I think that Liv will defend somewhat wide to a min raise. And she didn't shove, right? So that can discount a lot of her ace queens, ace jacks, king queens, etc.
Check, check on the river.
So he lets Liv get a small pot there. I'm not sure if she would have folded to 1 bet on the flop, but she probably would have given her stack size.
Apologies for the technical difficulties we've been suffering tonight, folks, in the first phase of this show. Looking to get things back up and running soon. Believe we still have audio. Jonathan and I will do our best to talk you through the hands.
Here Igor opens from the cutoff with ace 3 off. I'm sorry, ace queen offsuit. And Dario's considering playing 7-5 offsuit in the big blind, and he does defend. And another good example of a tough spot incoming for Dario. It comes queen 5-4, 2 hearts. Dario has a 7 of hearts in his hand for a backdoor flush draw. So Igor has top pair, top kicker. Dario has middle pair, a backdoor straight draw, and a backdoor flush draw. Igor, of course, bets the flop with his nearly nut hand, and Dario sticks around. Turns a 2, not really helping either player, but also whenever the 2 comes, it makes it to where Dario doesn't have to worry about hands like random king jacks improving if the turn was, say, a jack, right? So your opponent's much more likely to improve to a hand that beats you when the turn card is an overcard to your pair. Igor bets 4,000 into the 6,700 pot. I'm doing a little bit of rounding here. Pretty tough spot for Dario. I'm not sure how aggressive Dario expects Igor to be. I don't think you should be folding this to 1 more turn bet. It really does open you up to getting barreled very frequently if you're folding in this spot, because if you're folding this, you're folding just everything worse than pocket 6s. And it's kind of hard to have pocket 6s or better on that board. So Dario does fold, and it was the correct fold there. But I'm not sure if it was ideal. Igor raising under the gun now 5-handed with king-queen suited. Big blind defend from Luneau with pocket 5s. Jack 7-3, 1 diamond. Igor has a backdoor draw.
Hi, I hope I haven't been picking my nose or anything.
So Luneau peels the flop with pocket 5s on
Focus. I don't have much to talk to you guys about.
Jack 7-3.
I assume the commentators are doing a wonderful job.
Kind of. So 7 completes the board here. Alexandre, no.
Wait, what?
Gonna
Brad
win
and
this.
Angelina are divorcing?
Notice what just happened.
Whoa!
That's right.
Notice just what happened on this hand compared to the previous hand, where Igor barreled off with
Love me some
top pair,
Angelina.
but here he checked behind with king high, right? So it's a spot where Luneau probably should have folded the turn if he faced a bet, but he did not face a bet, so he can very often assume he has the best hand. Luneau value bets the river and gets called by king high there. I'm a little bit surprised at that, although the obvious gut shot draws, there were a lot of them, they all missed. That'd be a good spot where we could pause and review that action, because bet sizes there are pretty important, I think.
Dario kicks it up to 1,200 on the button. Luneau's going to 3-bet from the small blind, ace 10 of hearts.
So as we see, Luneau is using probably a purely 3-betting or folding strategy from the small blind with these stacks. It's a pretty good spot to apply a lot of pressure as well, just because, again, Liv's pretty short, and Luneau and Dario both have relatively deep stacks to where you can apply a lot of pressure to him and just generally put him in bad spots. Last time, Dario folded King 10 suited. This time he has Ace 7 suited, which is an equally bad hand. But as your opponent is 3-betting you from the small blind more often, you obviously have to defend more often. So I don't fault him for folding the previous hand, and I don't really fault him for calling this hand. I think either play between folding or calling, or even 4-betting here would be acceptable. Queen 10-9 flop, 2 spades, 1 club. So Dario has a backdoor flush draw. Luneau has middle pair. Luneau does do the, we'll call it the GPL bet of betting small, about 1/3 pot, which is really just good poker.
A big whiff for Dario here, other than the backdoor club draw.
Yeah, you say it's a big whiff. It's not really a big whiff. It's kind of a big whiff.
A small C bet.
It's a little.
It's a little whiff.
Drawy borders
Bit
that
whiffy.
by Luneau.
Guys,
I'd
thanks.
say.
I'll try not to interrupt Liv Boeree, guys, because I know you guys want to hear what she has to say. Just want to apologise for the technical difficulties we've been suffering so far. This is our first night on this latest online phase of the GPL.
Believe it or not, we showed up about 4 hours early and did a bunch of rehearsals, so we're at least halfway prepared.
The commentators did their bit. And a pretty interesting flop here between Igor and Dominik.
Igor limped small blind, and Dominik checked big blind. Igor has queen 6 of hearts. Dominik has 6-5 offsuit. Comes 9-8-5, 2 hearts. Igor decided to check. Dominik bet his bottom pair and draw. Igor check raised. I've missed the sizing, 2.5x or so, I believe. And Dominik called. Turns another 8, and Igor's firing again. Getting check raised on the flop in these limped pots is always a difficult thing to deal with because you don't know if he's check raising mostly nut hands or a bunch of draws. So the turn was an 8. Igor bet again. Dominik called. River was an 8. Igor, oh, what am I saying? Turn was an 8. It went bet call. River's another 8. So now Dominik has a full house.
Okay,
Igor
so
has
Igor
nothing.
gives up on the river there.
Igor does like to give up. And that's a good give up because your opponent has a pair a ton, and a lot of people are not so good at folding full houses.
Couple of big hands here. 5-handed.
If it makes anyone feel better, I tried to stream last night from my hotel room here in Malta, and I couldn't make that work either. The internet is tough here in Malta. I've tried streaming from multiple locations here, and it has not been incredibly successful. So the fact that you can even hear me is a mild miracle. And if we get it back up and running, it's going to be fantastic.
It's GPL radio at the moment, folks.
All right, so here Luneau raises cutoff with ace-jack offsuit. Dominik 3-bets again. Very big. Luneau made it 1,700. Dominik makes it 6,800 from the small blind. Probably not wanting Luneau to call in position. And Dominik gets it. It comes ace-king 2. Dominik has ace-king offsuit for top 2 pair. Luneau has ace-jack for top pair marginal kicker. Some people think the jack is a great kicker. It's actually just kind of marginal because you lose to ace-king and ace-queen, which are the most obvious 3-betting hands from the small blind, especially with Liv sitting around with the shorter stack. So we've seen Dominik applying pressure here twice in spots where, as the middle stacked player, he should be somewhat snug, but he just has it, right? So Dominik makes the GPL bet, 5,000 into 15,000, and Luneau is probably going to call here with his top pair jack kicker. He is giving it some time to think, but I don't really see any play besides call. I don't think you want to shove. If you shove here or raise, Dominik's probably only going to continue when you're in pretty rough shape. Wow.
This could be the
nail in the coffin.
RIP card for Alexandre Luneau.
Everyone at home, think about what that is. It is the jack. So now he has 2 pair. Now he is primarily beating ace-queen. It's kind of a cool spot because the jack improves Luneau, but he still loses to the same range of value hands. Like he's still losing to, almost the same range of value hands.
He's now beating ace-queen, probably that's about the hand that he overtakes.
Why don't you get it just in? Bust out.
Well, especially if Dominik continues betting, his range should be pretty strong. It's hands he's either bluffing with or hands he's trying to get in with. And if he's bluffing and you're Luneau, you certainly just want to call. And if he's trying to get it in, well, you are in bad shape. River's a 6, so Dominik's going to have the best hand. Pot is now 37,000. Dominik has 19,000 in his stack. Dominik's probably just going to shove.
Does Luneau get away from this?
No, I think Luneau just has to call.
We are live on Twitch, folks. Looks like we're up and running. Thank you for your patience.
And he does get
Suffering
called.
a few little technical difficulties at the start of this stream.
So just like that, Dominik gets the double up. And now Luneau is down to only 8,300 chips, which is 10 big blinds. So a pretty tiny stack.
Huge chip leader now.
Luneau has ace-9 offsuit under the gun 5-handed. He's probably going to shove this and get a bunch of folds. Dario has jack-10 offsuit in the big blind, but I don't think he can call this.
Well, it turns out that unplugging the internet and plugging it in does work.
Oh, wow.
Here we go.
We're back.
Thank you.
When in doubt, unplug it, bang on the box a little bit. Not too hard, you'll break it. And maybe click the reset button if it comes to that. That is what 99% of tech people will tell you if you call them on the phone after waiting for 3.5 hours.
Thank you for your patience, guys. Welcome if you're just tuning in. My name is Roland in the booth, Boothby. Joined by two-time WPT champ, Jonathan Little, last member of the Las Vegas Moneymakers.
Interesting spot here for Liv with a 15 big blind stack and 8-7 suited on the button with,
A little on the tighter side. So we really need the points.
as she said, she really doesn't want to shove there
Good
and
fold.
bust. So shove from Dario, pretty standard. Luneau's call is also pretty standard. So good play by both of those players. You'll find that quite often in tournament poker, or poker in general, both players can play very well, and someone's going to lose, right?
Riskies.
So Dario got it in, bad there. Actually, though they chop it up. Dario got it in bad there, but he did nothing wrong, right? And whenever that happens, you can't think that he was lucky to get the chop or anything like that. They just both played fine. All right, so Dominik is now the big chip leader, and he should be able to have his way with the table to some extent.
Not the action Liv wanted there with the ace-king. Guys, thanks for your patience during the technical problems. If you want to follow us on Twitter, @GPL, use the hashtag GPL to join the conversation. Tell us what you like about the stream. Tell us what you don't like. Follow us on Twitch. So download the GPL app, which is now available on iOS and Android.
I downloaded the app, and you can actually watch the replays of all of these games. I assume this replay will be on there with video, most likely.
Yeah, people might actually get to see the first hour of this show.
Right, so if you missed it and you want to see all the cards, if you think we're not good enough broadcasters, well then make sure you download the app and give it a watch.
What was the first match you played back on the app, Jonathan?
I actually haven't watched any on the app yet, but I have a spreadsheet of all of the games, and I have marks next to the ones I've watched, marks next to the ones I've analyzed, and I've watched maybe a third of them. There's a lot of content on the Global Poker League. This is match, I don't even know what it is, match number 150 or something like that. And if each match is an hour and a half, that is a lot of content. So if you're trying to learn poker, watching Global Poker League is a great way to do it. All right, here we have Luneau all in for his short stack with Jack-9 suited. I imagine Liv's going to fold this in the big blind with King-10 offsuits.
Just to avoid confusion, Jonathan Little is in the commentary booth here at the GPL studio in Malta. He is not playing in this matchup. He is a member of the Las Vegas Moneymakers.
And I'm not playing in the match later today.
He is not. They're sending in the Scott, the Wrecking Ball.
We need someone to get us some points, and Scott Ball is the man to do the job. So take a look at what's happening here. Igor's opening, kind of wide-handed. Now Dominik, using its big chip stack, is going to abuse Igor pretty hard. Igor decides to not take it, though, and elects to jam. And this is a spot where Igor probably realizes Dominik's going to get somewhat out of line and shove in the spot to take advantage of Dominik's overly wide 3-betting range. And it does work out, but that's a spot where it's really costly whenever Dominik actually does have a hand. And interestingly enough, Dominik's had a hand pretty much every time he's applied aggression so far, except for that time.
Okay, Liv picks up ace-queen on the button. Shoves in a 12 big blind. It's going to get called by Alexandre Luneau with a 9-10.
Good.
He's flopped to 9 here. Liv's flopped top pair with the queen. 9 or 10. Liv remains.
Nice. Sweet.
Nice save 4 of hearts on the river there. And Liv will double up.
It's always good to get a double up when you're a short stack. And, well, not really a full double up, but she at least busts
Back in it.
Luneau.
Another attractive hand for Liv here. Dominik kicked things off with the king-queen off under the gun. Question from Unknown Genius on Twitch. Who are the new commentators? My name is Roland in the booth, Boothby. I'll be hosting the next 6 weeks of the GPL. I'll be have a rotating conveyor belt of poker talent, starting with two-time WPT champ Jonathan Little, who's joined me.
Hello.
In the booth here at our studio in Malta.
I'm part of the Las Vegas Moneymakers.
He certainly is.
And now the commentary team. So, interesting spot here. Dominik, what happened here? Was there a 3-bet? No, so it was just a call. So Dominik, I believe, calls on the flop, or calls pre-flop and then leads the flop with his marginal draw. That's the spot where maybe he doesn't really want to check call, so he likes to turn his hand into a semi-bluff instead. So here he's applying a lot of pressure. This should be a great board for Dominik's defending range, and a pretty bad flop for Liv's pre-flop range. Liv should probably be playing mostly big cards. It just so happens that she has a pair. And now does Dom fire the last shell? It's a tough spot. Dom should not have very many aces. But Dom could easily have a lot of 2 pairs. So I would not be surprised if he goes for it. He does go for it.
Another tough spot for Liv.
Well, she loses to everything besides bluffs, but Dominik has taken this line where he could very easily be bluffing. Usually when people lead into the pre-flop raiser, it's often with a hand that's not quite good enough to check call. And that could mean value hands that are marginal or
Does jam all his
draws.
Like, Queen Jacks, King Queens, it has
Similar
spade.
spot to the
He's gonna bet
spot she was
twice.
put in by
He
Dario.
does jam that river a bunch. He does
He really
also
can.
have like aces, like, you know, ace of spades X. He doesn't always bet that twice though. He sometimes checks flop. I have some. I still have some aces. I have like ace 10 that I've flat.
So he does get away with it. Sweet bluff, and that is a good example of Dominik using his big stack to apply a bunch of pressure.
Ace king again for Liv. Going to run into 9-10 suited, a bit like she did in the hand against Luneau. Big flop for Dominik Nitsche.
Wearing my shirt again.
Wearing your shirt, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, you're on the stream.
Okay. Wow.
Hello,
Hey, Igor.
another Igor.
Who's playing nature? Sorry.
Go away, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I gotta do that.
Well, go somewhere else, please.
So here, a little bit. Maybe I was confused about the previous hand on the action. I apologize for that because it looks like Dominik was just in the big blind. Yeah, I must have been wrong on the previous action. Must have just went bet, bet, jam. I suppose. I apologize.
Nice.
This is going to call here with the ace high.
Oh, come on. Ace of king.
Wow, Igor, bad luck coming on the string.
Kappa!
No way.
Double one.
And
Tough
Liv's
run
gonna,
for Liv. Good call on the flop, though.
Liv's going to bust here in fourth. She put in a lot of tough spots in that game. She noted before the game that
What do you get? Fourth?
she was in a really horrible position, stuck between Dario and Dominik. And it turned out to be those two did give her the most kind of uncomfortable situations. And we're three-handed.
Well, she had
Just
a few
like
good
that.
hands lose, and whenever you have a few good hands that do not work out, and you know, to be fair, she got put in some horrible spots where she had marginal bluff catchers and faced people who are willing to go all in. And if your opponents are willing to go all in, and you have some marginal hand, it's often best to just fold. But you know, if she would have called both of those times with her marginal hand, she'd be the chip leader. And you know, I'm not saying her folds are necessarily bad, but you got to be on the right side of those if you want to win at poker.
Well, we know it before the game, the pressure that was on Dominik Nitsche and Dario Sammartino to deliver some points for their team. The Rome Emperors and the Berlin Bears propping up the table as we move towards the playoffs. Those bottom two spots are not the two spots you want to be in. So yeah, we're going to see those two add much needed points to their team's tally. Just as we thought they might. You know, those two were the stand-up guys in the lineup tonight.
Well, take a look at the stack sizes we have going on right here. Here we have Dario and Igor, both with, well, we'll call it 20-ish big blind stacks. it's always interesting to see if Dominik's going to use a purely shove or fold strategy or a mostly shove or fold strategy, because neither of these players is going to go broke before the other player. So Dario probably gets the vibe that that's what Dominik's doing and decides to call off with king queen, because that's a pretty big shove to call off. However many big blinds it was.
Top pair here. There is a 5 out there. 5 or an ace to knock out Dario Sammartino.
Now that assuming Dominik loses his hand, as he does, now he can't really use the shove strategy because now he's risking too many chips. But whenever you have the big stack by a big margin, you can often just use a shoving strategy for 20-ish big blind stacks with a really wide range. And your opponents just cannot call that often, assuming they care about the points they're playing for, which they are. They probably do care about the points. So here Igor limps small blind, and Dominik just shoves it all in with ace-4 offsuit. Kind of a risky strategy because maybe Igor is limping all of his range and not raising his good hands. But if he's raising his good hands, well, then that's not going to work out so well.
Aces.
Igor with aces. Great spot to min raise. Dominik may get crazy. I don't think he's going to get crazy, but maybe he gets crazy. This would be pretty out of line.
I think we'll probably see a defend here from Dario.
Yeah. Could be trouble for him.
Certainly could.
So if he plays his hand a little cautiously and likes to check, call, then maybe he doesn't get stacked because maybe he folds by the river if the board runs out a little bit rough. But if the board runs out pretty clean, he's probably going to give Igor a double up. Some players check raise this flop. They realize that they're check raising a lot of various draws here, so maybe they want to put top pairs in that range. Otherwise, they're only check raising draws. But Dario decides to...
Third spade out there.
Yeah, Dario decides to call. Wow, minimum bet by Igor. Maybe this is a misclick. Maybe it's not. It's kind of weird to bet the minimum here because you're giving your opponent very good odds to draw. Like right now, if Dario knew Igor's hand, he would still just call because he's getting a great price to defend. And to just try to improve to 2-pair. Awful run out for Igor, and as you see, Igor does not get the full double up in a spot where a lot of players just check raise the flop and get it in with that queen 6, and that did not happen, and Dario conserved a pretty good amount of chips there. So good play by him. All right, let's see if Dominik continues his aggression, and he does not. He chills out a little bit. This is another spot where I would not hate.
No, it's Dario.
Hello.
Here we go, guys. Dario Sammartino there on the webcam.
Wow, you said he likes tracksuits, and he's wearing a tracksuit.
Well, I actually told you that Igor Yaroshevsky likes tracksuits.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But Dario Sammartino is certainly partial to a tracksuit himself. Very partial to a hat, despite having a beautiful head of hair.
If you have a beautiful head of hair, show it off. Be proud. And if you have no hair, be proud.
Dario likes to mix it up, but he's, I mean, if I had hair like that, you'd never see it covered by a hat, that's for sure. Dario shoving on Igor. Dario looks like he has a companion with him, of whom we can only see his left arm. A sort of tattooed individual, it would seem.
Will you be my companion for the next 2 weeks?
I'll be your companion.
All right.
Have you got an elbow like that? A tattooed, rugged tattooed elbow.
I do not have a tattooed elbow. I'm sorry.
Ace
I may
queen
not be the right
suited?
match for you.
Ace queen suited on the button for Igor.
And it's interesting to note these players are just open jamming. I think that's perfectly fine, but you also have to realize you're often giving up a little bit of value when you're shoving with the top of your range. So I'm a pretty big fan of just keeping a min-raising range. But if you think a min-raise is going to get shoved on in general, because Dominik has the big stack, maybe you should just elect to have the pure shoving range. So Igor defending king 8 suited. Notice here if Dominik open shoved, he would have just won the pot pre-flop. I don't really expect Dominik to be the type of player who gets a little bit gun-shy just because he shoved ace-5 and got called by king-queen. I don't think that's going to mess with him at all. I expect another small bet on this flop. Although he may check. He does put out the small bets and gets Igor to fold.
Give it up.
Small bets are very powerful because you're risking almost nothing to win a relatively large pot. Here's a spot where Igor would probably limp the majority of the time, but he may fear a shove from Dominik again.
Keep your questions coming in on Twitch, folks. Any comments, any suggestions? Let us know. Follow the conversation on Twitter. Hashtag GPL, @GPL, if you want to follow us.
He puts in a jam. That's a pretty sizable jam.
Thanks for all the comments regarding the audio, guys. We're looking to get everything sorted out for you as soon as possible. Dominik raising small to big with the 4-9 off. Dario's going to peel. Dominik floats best.
Dario has to be a little bit careful here, even though he is in position. We know, I'm not sure if he is watching the stream with the delay, but he probably knows Dominik is capable of just 3-barreling off with a wide range. And Jack 5 is not really a hand you want to have versus someone who may just 3-barrel off. But he does defend. Dominik takes sort of the game theory optimal line of checking middle pair and some bottom pairs in situations. Here he has middle pair. He likes to just check. Dario is clearly done with this hand.
Dario giving not much away at all about the surroundings in which he's playing. We've seen some palatial properties here on the GPL, no more so than Phil Galfon. Not getting much from Dario there. We know that his room has a wall and at least one plug socket.
And a human.
And another human being. 2 chairs.
So again, notice here Dominik's betting 1 big blind into this 5 big blind pot. Or 4.5 big blind pot. And it puts Igor in a pretty tough spot unless he has something. I mean, even with queen high, you can conceivably get value from worse hands there. Whereas if he was to make a larger bet, like say the size of the pot, well now he's only going to get called when he's beat. So by betting tiny, you can get some value, and if your opponent folds, that's fine too.
Don't forget to download the GPL app, guys. Follow the GPL on the move. Get the standings, get highlights, get access to the GPL merchandise. Go buy the hoodie of your favorite GPL franchise.
Do I have to wear a suit every day, or can I wear my Global Poker League Las Vegas Moneymaker shirt?
Once you've logged onto the GPL shop, Jonathan, you can wear whatever merchandise you like, as long as it is official GPL merchandise.
I already have one. I'm the member of the team.
Ignore the unofficial vendors, guys. They'll be popping up soon.
So here, Dominik continues his aggression. He is not open shoving, which I would not hate an open shove with this. I think it could be perfectly fine, given both these players have gotten blinded down a bit to about 15 big blinds each. It's a tough spot for Igor with queen 6 offsuit. I mean, very similar spot to what Dario was in, except for now it's a bit worse because Igor's out of position. You really don't want to be playing these marginal hands from out of position. But at the same time, you also don't want to be folding getting 3-1 or 4-1 pot odds. So he has those two conflicting things going on to where he needs to defend a lot based on his pot odds, but at the same time, his hand's kind of garbage. So we may see an Igor bust out in this hand. If Dario jams all in, Igor may find a fold. But if Dario makes a regular raise, maybe Igor just has to go with it. And it looks like Dario does shove. And let's see if Igor has to call off. You'll find that calling off with ace-x is often not fantastic because when you're ahead, you're just barely ahead. And when you're behind, you're often way behind, as he is in this spot. But a great flop for you if you had to pick a flop where you don't hit.
Oh, plenty of outs now for Igor heading to the river. Ace, 5, deuce.
And he does
not
not
going to get there.
them.
There's heads up with Dominik.
So you said the two players who really needed to have a score in this match.
Well, I said at the start that the Berlin Bears and the Rome Emperors were struggling, failing to having reached treble figures on the standings. Both are going to add some much needed points to their total here.
And just like that, I mean, they're going to be not necessarily overtaking the lead or anything, but they are now well back within striking distance of making the playoffs, and that's fantastic.
To answer the question of the Phoenix 0-0, you absolutely can watch the full replay of the match, both on our YouTube channel, GPL on YouTube, and on our homepage, gplglobalpokerleague.com.
And on the app.
And on the app. To answer the question of Beer Mank P, are Griffin and Sam done? Well, they're certainly done with the GPL for this phase of 6 weeks of online matchups. Griffin Benger is preparing for the final table of the World Series of Poker to be played in Las Vegas. Sam is focusing on his game at the moment after having a nice run of results following his commentary on the GPL.
He watched the Global Poker League and realized he needs to study more. I think that's what everyone who is not the absolute best at poker quickly realizes if you watch the play of a lot of these players on the Global Poker League, that you have a lot of learning to do. So here we have both players with very marginal made hands. They check down in a tiny pot, which is perfectly fine. It's just a good strategy. So we see the players using a limping strategy with this 20 big blind stack. Maybe we can discuss that at some point in depth, but you often want to be limping a lot of these hands that you don't want to raise with and get shoved on. Like Queen 9, if you limp and your opponent raises, you can very easily call in position and see what happens. But whenever you raise to, say, 4,000, Dario can now go all in and put you in a miserable spot to where you have to fold out Queen 9, which is a pretty good hand. So you'll see a lot of players developing limping strategies that are hard to exploit. You have to make sure you're not just limping all of your bad hands and raising all of your good hands, though, because then you're really face up.
Interesting turn card here. Dario turns the straight. Dominik picks up the queen high flush draw. Probably one of the more action cards in the deck going to the turn.
Definitely an action card. So Dominik does continue betting. I'm a little bit surprised to see him continue betting this exact hand, because I think ace high is going to call a lot. So I'm not sure he's getting many worse hands to fold here. Dario does play it slow. Let's see if he continues checking the river. I think he probably should. And he does. He gives Dominik one more shot to bluff. And now I would not mind a bluff from Dominik, because now Igor should have, or sorry, Dario should have a lot of ace highs and bad pairs in his range, which may fold to a river bet. But Dominik gives up. Luckily for him, he gives up, because that was not going to work. Another bit of an action flop. Whenever you're playing heads up, you have to realize hand values change significantly. Like right here, king high is going to be good a decent amount of the time. And if it's not good, you have the backdoor draws to go along with it. So Dominik's almost never going to be folding in this spot. We have Dario and Dominik. They're trying to confuse us right off the bat.
A bit of ace of hearts. Not really the action turn that we were looking for. And that's another bricky card on the river.
Notice now in Dominik's spot on the turn, if he bets and gets called, he's usually in bad shape. Whereas if it gets checked down now, he very often wins. So does Dario elect to turn this hand into a bluff to try to get Dominik to fold king high and queen high? I don't know. It's a tough spot.
Okay, king high going to take it down there for Dominik. Thanks to you guys who are letting us know about the audio issues that you're hearing. Well, our guys back in the studio are trying to figure this all out. Please be patient with us. This is our first show back after a long time out of the studio.
I've tried many streams, and probably a third of the time, something doesn't work. Especially if you don't stream for a month or two, then nothing works. It's like guaranteed that nothing's going to work if you're streaming after a month or two.
And you're using all that New York internet, which is
Yeah,
well known as one of the good internets.
I have good New York internet.
We're using the second worst internet here in Malta, behind the Chinese internet.
So here on the river, Dominik has a marginal flush. Well, he's certainly going to call. I was going to be...
Were you surprised by Dario's pot size bluff there with the sort of second nut low?
Well, the goal is to get your opponent off of pairs, and I think you probably can. One thing that a lot of players may not know is that whenever your opponent's betting on a 4-flush board heads up, if they can bluff, if they're capable of bluffing, you should be calling with top pairs a lot of the time. And that's just because they're going to be bluffing a lot. And especially if they're not going to be betting with the bad flushes. So they're really only betting stuff like the ace, the king, the queen, the jack, the 10 of club, or the 10 of the flush.
Could see some action on this board. Top pair for Dario. Bottom pair and a backdoor club draw.
Ooh.
Oh, definitely going to see some action now.
We may see the end of the game. So Dominik's going to continue checking most likely. Although, you'll see a lot of the players in the Global Poker League leading the turn when the middle and the bottom card pair. And they're doing this with their entire range, because this is a card that should be very good for the flop caller. Because quite often, the player in position will not bet with middle and bottom pair. So you can take that out of the range. And the player from out of position will always call with middle and bottom pair. So this should very heavily favor Dominik's range. This time it does, but I imagine he would also lead with stuff like 10-9 and 9-6 and ace highs, trying to get Dario to fold out an 8 and ace high and whatnot by the river. So Dario likes to raise, probably because Dominik bets so tiny. And I have no clue what Dominik's going to do now. Notice here what's going to happen a lot of the time if Dominik calls is the river's going to check through and Dario's not going to lose any more money. So that's actually a pretty sweet play because you get value from draws and also you don't value bet yourself on the river. As you see, Dario does this check behind the top pair, bad kicker. And he doesn't let Dominik bet the turn for 2,500, then bet the river for 15,000. It's a sweet play right there by Dario that maybe saved him his stack.
Yeah, the turn raise from Dario, they definitely got him seemed to have got him a cheaper river showdown. Or a free river showdown.
Yeah, I mean, that was about as good as you could hope for, really.
Dario flops bottom pair here. Just a gut shot for Dominik.
So Dario's had a few scenarios now where he could have easily just gone broke with decently strong hands, and he has not both times. I think it was, I don't exactly remember the other one, but there was another one where he did not play a big pot where he could have. And that's exactly what you need to be doing if you want to do great at poker. And he only has 10 big blinds left, but 10 big blinds is way better than 0. So tough spot for him now. I think he probably needs to fold on this pretty bad turn. Bottom pair bad kicker is not a good hand when facing a lot of aggression. I used to think in heads-up poker you had to call it all sorts of stuff, and it's true to some extent, but not so much when all the money goes in on the turn of the river. Kind of a tight fold there by the king-2 offsuit. You could certainly call if you felt like it.
Are you going to shove the queen-jack suited?
Notice Dominik again continuing this limping strategy. If Dario starts shoving very frequently versus the limps, maybe Dominik tightens up a bit. This is a hand that Dario could very easily put in his limping range. I think this is a pretty sweet hand to limp with, assuming you don't want to be only shoving or folding, and maybe maybe Dario is only shoving or folding. But that's a hand you can limp with and see a flop, and ace high is going to be good the vast majority of the time after the flop. And if your opponent shoves, that's fantastic. You just don't want to make it to where every time you limp, your opponent knows that you will fold to a shove, because then you're just really easy to play against. So you mix it up by putting some pretty good hands in your limping range. Dominik does what he wants to be doing in these limp pots, which is limp folding. I'm sorry, limp betting and then getting a fold. Getting our words wrong today. We're all flustered. Internet's not working. It's hot in this room.
The tanning lights of the studio.
I didn't wear sunscreen today. I should have worn sunscreen.
Oh yeah, you need sunscreen in the studio, Jonathan.
I messed up. I'm going to be red next time you guys see me. So notice what I just said, right? Dominik elects to limp the ace-jack suited. So he's implementing the strategy I just outlined. And still just doing the limp bet, right?
Dario down to 22,000. Did I predict Dominik Nitsche was going to win?
You did. Good job.
Good job.
In our initial run-through before the game, I picked Dominik. I decided to change it up this time, so...
Believe it or not, we did have about 3 rehearsals, folks. Everything went smoothly, as you'd imagine.
And now here we are.
And here we are, without any visual for the first hour.
But again, you can watch the replay.
The replay will be up on the YouTube channel, guys.
Also on the app.
Also on the app.
The app is great. If you have a commute or if you go to the gym or anything like that where you normally listen to music or a podcast, watch a Global Poker League game.
You can even watch Jonathan Little.
You can even watch me play sometimes. I don't play all the time, but I do play sometimes.
Follow us on Twitter, folks, at GPL. Use the hashtag GPL to join the conversation.
I'm going to read my tweets now and see what we have. See if anyone's talking to me. Here we're going to see an all-in
Could see an all-in a call here.
Oh, hello. Goodbye.
Safe flop for Dario. Doesn't want the other 5 to pair. Oh, and there it is. Dominik Nitsche turns the 9. Dario's going to need a 3 now. We've got a winner in this game. And that's it. Adios, Dario. Congratulations, Dominik Nitsche. He's going to drag the Berlin Bears off the bottom of the division. It was a pretty exciting game to kick things off. We identified Dario and Dominik at the top of the show as the two kind of power players in that Eurasian Six Max. Boeree, as she noted at the start, found herself in a very tough spot in between two guys, and they really put her under pressure there, didn't they, on a few rivers?
They did. I mean, they were willing to get after it and fire 3 barrels. And whenever you're against someone who is firing 3 barrels, that is tough. And she found herself on the bad end of that a few times, and they ended up winning because their bluffs succeeded, and she did not win, unfortunately.
Okay, we're going to have a look at the scores now here, guys. The first game here is awarding 7 points to Dominik Nitsche and 5 to Dario. Igor Yaroshevsky picking up 2. Boeree, who didn't really do anything wrong. Well, maybe a couple of folds that were incorrect, but they were certainly the folds that Jonathan didn't think were too unreasonable. Alexandre Luneau took 1 point, and the donut goes to Guodong. I think what we can say about that game is that the teams that really needed the points in that game got them. I suppose the Paris Aviators will probably be the most disappointed. They're sitting there on 104 points, and Alexandre Luneau was only able to add 1. So they're going to be looking over their shoulders at the Rome Emperors and the Berlin Bears.
Right, they went from a solid 4th place to now probably still in 4th place, but just barely. And the top 4 teams in each division get into the playoffs. So now it's pretty much anyone's game in the Eurasia Conference.
Yeah, top 4 teams going through to the playoffs, guys. The winning team at the end of all this is going to be awarded $100,000. You'll be able to see the playoffs from our studio in Las Vegas at the end of November. Now, the 2 bottom teams in the Eurasian Conference are the Rome Emperors and the Berlin Bears. They've really put in a sort of stellar performance. What was your opinion of the game flow? Obviously, we're going to have a little. Well, I'm going to have a section later where we talk through some sort of table dynamics. Obviously, Liv was noting there about her position at the table. Did you have any thoughts on who was using the table dynamic best and who was kind of maybe didn't quite pull that off?
Well, I think Dominik had that one spot where he became the chip leader. I don't exactly remember what happened. I think he had, what did he have? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Well, he had a big pot and he had 75,000 chips. That was the main thing. So with 75,000 chips, with the other players having 25,000 each, he was able to use a stack and shove all in a few times and really just keep his opponents low. I mean, he shoved with ace-5 once and got called by king-queen and lost, but he was still able to use his bigger stack than his opponents to lean on them and put them in miserable spots, and he got heads up with a lot of the chips, and that's exactly what you want to do whenever you do have a big chip lead 3 or 4-handed, and it worked out really well.
Yeah, so obviously going to go to the second game in a minute. Let's talk about what we can expect in this second game. Obviously, these guys really going to try and utilize, the momentum going into this next game. Dario Sammartino and Dominik Nitsche, obviously those 2 guys really needed to pull out a performance for their team captains.
What I'm interested in seeing is Guodong going to attempt another big bluff early in the game, or is he going to relax and just make sure he doesn't bust first again? I know I've played some of these games back to back, and when you bust on the first one early, you're like, oh, I need to do better next time, because you don't want to embarrass yourself in the team. And I mean, I've embarrassed myself a time or two so far in the Global Poker League, and it's no fun. So I would actually predict that Guo chills out a bit, but maybe he's going to flip that concept on his head and just go absolutely wild.
I think one of the interesting elements of the team concept of GPL is obviously you're being true to yourself as well as your teammates and really looking to kind of do it for them. And I can see how the pressure has really affected people who've got first 0 points in the first game, really under pressure, not only on themselves, but for their whole team. And I mean, you as a player who's played in the GPL, do you feel that additional pressure coming from not only yourself but the 4 other guys in your team?
I think as you just play more of a fundamentally sound strategy, and you're not really just kind of flying by the seat of your pants, you kind of let all that evaporate and you just try to play your best. And that means not being afraid of doing something silly if you think it's a good play. If you think that triple barrel bluff is going to work and you think it's good, you just do it, whether or not it's going to make the whole rest of your team very angry. I mean, Chris Moneymaker told us that if we do not get at least 5 points in every 6-handed game, we lose a finger. So now I'm left with 2 fingers, and it is what it is.
So in terms of Dong Guo going into the next game, you wouldn't suggest that he should either change up his game at all, perhaps play tighter in order to sort of pick up some points for his team. Do you think the sort of psychological knockback of getting 2 donuts would be so great that he'd even try and fold into the points in the second fixture?
Well, Hong Kong was right in there with Paris in the rankings, and they're not safe. I mean, I think you still just have to play to accumulate points, and I hope I see him coming out here with a nice sweet bluff, because I don't think anyone's going to expect that.
Yeah, we're rooting for Dong Guo in the second game, guys. We've seen the big boys take it down. Let's root for the Hong Kong Stars in this one. Come on, the Dong Guo. We're going to go to the game right away, guys.
All right, here we are. Players are in different seats, which is very relevant. Notice Liv has a different set of people on either side this time.
Dominik Nitsche on the webcam, guys. This will be a treat.
Dominik streamed on Twitch the other day. I watched it for a little bit. It was good. You can follow him on Twitter, wherever he is on Twitter, and he'll post about that if he ever does stream again. He's actually fresh off of a W Coupe 3rd place, as far as I can tell. So, good job to him on that.
And he's going to take the first pot down. We will be hearing from him, guys. Dominik Nitsche is very chatty indeed when he gets on cams.
He has a legitimate room.
Yeah, we get to look into the life of Dominik Nitsche.
What's that thing on the wall? On the right?
On the right-hand side, that looks like the tube of a vacuum cleaner.
Oh, so he was vacuuming earlier.
Yeah, it keeps his apartment in good nick.
Do you think that's what he does with all the chips? He wins all the chips and they get all over the floor and they just vacuums them up and puts them in his other room? The tube goes from one room here directly to his bank account? All right, here we have Guo opening up with tens.
Yeah, calling.
Now we go.
Hello, Dominik.
Got nothing. Just gonna check fold.
You think he has music in his headphones?
I think he's got the stream.
Well, he's dancing to something.
If he's watching the stream, he'll
And
currently be looking at you and I.
Notice here Dominik defended and then did not get ridiculous just because this flop could be good for him. He certainly did not have to fold there, but he did because he knows that's just good, solid, disciplined poker. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier about how he's not someone who all of a sudden decides to run big bluffs for no good reason. When he's running bluffs, he usually has a very good reason why he's doing it. So let's see if he 3-bets here.
We're gonna call here.
Okay.
No. I know, we're gonna call. Calling's fine.
As soon as I said 3-bet, he said, no, you think you can hear me? So I mentioned some players have a pure 3-betting strategy from the small blind. Other players do not. This is a hand that often does go in the calling range because if you 3-bet and get called, you're usually behind. But if you just call the pre-flop raise, you're often ahead. As we see here, right? So let's see if Igor gets crazy. I think Igor should call here the majority of the time, but maybe he thinks his hand is too weak to just call.
Just check here.
So this is another flop where I don't really think Dario needs to be betting too often into multiple players with garbage. And he does just check behind, as I kind of predicted. Didn't get the words out of my mouth quickly enough.
It's been one of those nights so far.
Yeah. I'm not a professional commentator. I just play one on the Global Poker
I'm
League.
certainly in the early phases of my commentating career. So,
Well, you were a janitor just a few weeks ago,
yeah,
right?
I mean, I was out cleaning the floor of the office earlier, and the CEO of the Global Poker League, Alexandre Dreyfus, came and asked me if I could commentate on poker, and I foolishly said yes. Here I am. I had to throw down my vacuum cleaner.
Just checking here. I'm not gonna put any chips in.
Notice again, Dominik just being very disciplined here with this king high, not trying to run a big bluff.
I mean, I can represent a few jacks here, right? So if I did have a jack, which I could play like this, I bet 1,000.
Oh, so he does go for it.
This bluff's going to work
gonna
very
work.
well against these exact two hands.
Well, I would not be surprised if Igor decides to call there. He could like Dominik said, he could very easily have a jack or a 5. He could certainly have a 5.
Do you think he could be worried about Dario Sammartino behind? Overcalling or raising?
Not really, because Dario
I have too many jacks there. Need to bet.
Dario would probably be betting with a lot of his better hands by the turn or the river, most likely. So I don't think he's so worried about that. So 8-6 suited opening it up. Let's see if Guo decides to defend the big blind. Guo is sort of a player who you don't really know what to predict from him. I mean, I suppose most players would be calling here, but for all I know, maybe he's just going to 3-bet and get after it.
I think it's fair to say that Guodong is the player in the GPL with whom we can predict the least accurately.
No, that's Scott Ball, but he's going to be on later. So when facing a bet like this on the flop, ace high is very often good. So calling this bet immediately, like if the hand was just over, would be very profitable. But quite often you're going to face additional bets. So it's not just the easiest call in the world, but I do think it's probably a spot where you do need to be calling, even with this bad ace high. It's a great turn card. Obviously you're looking for an ace or a 9, particularly an ace. It's a card you can get in trouble on sometimes. This is a spot where I expect Dario to fire out again a lot of the time because he has effectively the bottom of his range. And he has to assume that Guo has way more non-ace hands than aces, although maybe he does have just a lot of aces in this spot. Dario certainly has a lot of aces too, though. So now, does he try to bluff the river? I would probably not. You're only going to get busted draws to fold with a bet. Yeah, pretty tough spot here. I just think you have to check behind with the 8 high. A lot of people think that when they have the bottom of their range, they have to bluff every time, but that's just not true. Especially if your opponent's going to be calling, not necessarily based on your range, but based on the strength of their hand. You need to be disciplined and get out of the way with your bluffs that are very unlikely to succeed.
I think that hand was an example. Dario's been showing some pretty good timing on rivers. He always seems to check when his opponent has a hand that they're not going to lay down. He seems to unleash the clip when his opponent has a hand that they're willing to lay down. I think that's a sign of a good player. Always just seems to make the those river decisions and hold fire when they're not going to get the fold.
Yeah, I think maybe a tiny bet on that river would have been pretty
He didn't
sweet.
hit that flop.
So here Dominik is in an interesting spot. Let's see what he has to say. Well, he's just going to win the chips. It's always good to just win the chips.
I'll fold
A
this.
couple of good hands here. 3 good hands, really. Igor's going to kick things off with 2 jacks.
This is another spot where it's interesting to see if Guo calls or 3-bets. Either play is perfectly fine. If he calls, maybe Luneau decides to 3-bet. If he does just call, though, well, Luneau just snap folded. That's interesting. So no desire to get out of line there. When Guo calls, he lets Boeree call very easily.
Igor and Guodong have flopped a piece here. Igor with the jack high flush draw.
This is a great spot for Igor to check, because if he bets and gets called, he's often either against an ace or a good draw, and he's not in great shape versus either of those ranges. But when he checks, maybe Guo bets, now he can easily call and get to the turn, versus hopefully a somewhat wide range.
A question for Jonathan from Poppy Van Winkle, 23. Question for Jonathan. Do you think no limit hold'em players overvalue blockers? It certainly doesn't mean as much in PLO.
I don't think some players overvalue them. I think that most players don't even think about them in no limit hold'em in general, especially in the small and middle stakes games. The players who are probably overvaluing any individual piece of information are usually the players who are somewhat good, trying to get better, and really trying to figure out how this concept fits into their game. And blockers are certainly relevant, but all blockers really do is take certain combinations out of your opponent's range. And very rarely does that completely eliminate a big wide range of hands. Whereas in a game like PLO, there are spots where your opponent's going to either stick around with the nuts or not. And that's a little bit different in no limit hold'em because
for sure.
in no limit hold'em, if you have the second nut flush, well, you're just never folding. Whereas in PLO, the second nut flush, you very easily could fold. So do they overvalue the information? I don't know. Some people do, some people don't. The good players use it exactly as much as they should. So let's see what Liv does with the ace-3 suited. I would probably just fold this.
Ooh, got a left very small blind call. Probably quite a tight range.
That's what I was thinking. I'm a little bit surprised to see her stick around with this hand.
Pretty interesting flop.
I may just check this in Dominik's shoes out.
We're checking here.
Not necessarily because you think you're beat, but because Liv's range should be
pretty
strong.
good, but not as good as.
Bit of an action card on the turn.
Huge action card. Liv has 2 pair. Dominik has 2 pair.
Pretty good. Not as good as it looks. Yeah, we're facing a live lead here. Not unexpected.
As Dominik says,
Sort of her board, but 2 pair, just strong.
this is not as good as it looks. And I think that's good understanding of hand ranges by Dominik. Obviously, if he knew what Liv had, he would raise the turn and get it all in. But he certainly does not know.
This is so annoying.
See,
a lot of the small when she has like all the Broadway cards. In terms of bluffs, you could have.
Is Liv value betting here, Jonathan?
Yeah, she has 2 pair.
She is.
I can never fold, basically, but it's annoying.
Apologies.
I'm not happy
Oh, yeah.
about it. Yeah, that's one of the few hands. That's
I didn't
one
see
of
the
the hands
livered
I've used.
pair to 3.
It's worth mentioning though that if I did have like ace-8 or something instead, I would have folded. Ace-10 is an easy call though.
So as
I
Dominik
probably
says,
only call like 2 or better.
because Liv's range there is so strong in his mind, he really does just have to stick around with very strong hands. And, that's why Dominik is one of the best.
Nah.
Jonathan, let's
No.
go of the 8-3 off in the small blind.
So a bunch of garbage in this hand. Let's see if Dario opens it up or if someone else gets frisky. Come on, Guo, let's put it in with a 9-2 suited. Let's do it.
Like
Fold,
Guo
fold, fold.
Dong was thinking of the 9-2 suited. Decided to think better of it. Round to Dario with a king 6.
He wanted to get us excited. Why not give people some excitement?
Kicks it up to 600.
And Igor does call the min raise, as he very likely should.
Action turn card there. Dario pairing the 6. Up and down draw for Igor Yaroshevsky.
So, interesting bet from Igor on the turn. He's probably going to get some ace highs to fold. So probably not such a bad strategy, especially given he has a draw. Should he continue firing? It's kind of a difficult spot because some ace highs may call just indiscriminately because they're like, well, when the bottom card pairs, it generally makes all the ace high type hands better than if, say, the river was a queen or even a 6. I imagine Dario's probably just going to make the call here, though.
Dario lays it down, slightly surprisingly. He's normally he made the right decision in the first game and in what we've seen so far in this game.
Well, I mean, you're not going to call right every time.
He's
That
not.
just goes to show you're not going to nail it every single
Even
time.
Dario Sammartino could make a mistake. Alexandre Luneau is going to kick things off to 6-6-6 under the gun. He's going to run in some opposition from Igor Yaroshevsky in the small blind. These guys take a flop after the 3-bet from Yaroshevsky. King 4 deuce. Tough to see Alexandre Luneau continuing this hand after being 3-bet. But he's going to see one more. He's going to hit the gin card there.
Wow.
Were you surprised he peeled there? It's in position.
He's in position. I'm a little bit surprised with the ace-jack offsuit. I don't love it. It really depends a lot on Igor's bet size and also what he thinks about Igor's general strategy. Probably a bit of a wide peel. Maybe that's some limit hold'em game coming through because in limit hold'em you're just always calling in a 3-bet pot here because you're getting amazing pot odds. Luneau very properly elects to get into showdown value or showdown mode.
Pretty bad run out for Igor.
Awful run out
Should
for
be able to
Igor.
get away from this pretty comfortably.
Well, so here's the blocker situation that we were just asked about on Twitter. Like, imagine Luneau bets, should Igor go all in? Because he blocks the straight, right? Because he has 2 jacks, so now jack 10 is way less likely. So, given that, should Igor be shoving? And I would say definitely not, just because if Luneau has 2 pair, he's not folding. So, you're not easily able to get your opponent off non-nut hands, whereas if we were playing PLO, well, 2 pairs are going to fold if you shove. So, that's a good example of a spot where many players will just never even consider that.
Don't forget to like the GPL on Facebook, folks. You'll see a number of very useful videos being shared on that page. Follow the GPL on Twitter, @GPL. Use the hashtag GPL. not only will you become well versed in the Global Poker League, you'll also become far more knowledgeable about the Ghanaian Premier League. Seems like a. Do you know what the Ghanaian Premier League is?
I have no clue what you're talking about.
That's a soccer league down there in Africa.
I'm from America, so we don't know about soccer,
Have you heard
football.
and you've never heard of other countries.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's accurate.
That's why the Ghanaian Premier League was basically Chinese. Yeah, we share a hashtag with our friends down in Ghana.
I understand.
The soccer fans down there.
It's finally all coming together. So notice here Igor checks back the flop with top pair bad kicker. This is a board where if he bets and gets called again, this top pair bad kicker's in marginal shape. So you usually want to be betting only the turn and the river, or maybe just the river, or maybe just the turn, depending on the run out. Quite often, top pair is good for 1 or 2 streets of value, whereas a lot of amateur players try to put in 3 streets of value, and then they wonder why they're always beat when they get to the river. And that's because they make their opponents fold out all of their worst hands by the river, so they're only calling you when you're in bad shape. So we may see a bit of action in this spot. We have 3 players with very playable hands. Let's see if Luneau has the auto fold on again. That'd be interesting to see. If you see someone with the auto fold on with ace 2 offsuit in this spot too often, you can just know they're never getting out of line there, and you can completely discount their 3 bets, or you can not discount, you can do the opposite. You can give their 3 bets way more weight in the future. But he did not have the auto fold on here. Notice Guo does just call, and again lets Liv Boeree come along somewhat cheaply. And I'm okay with this play. I'm not saying that the King Jack suited call is bad, but it does let Liv Boeree defend with a pretty wide range. So now this is another spot where Igor just cannot bet. It's too likely that one of the 2 opponents has something in this spot.
Pretty straightforward pot here. Top pair for Guodong.
Yeah, he made a little bit of a small bet in this spot. I don't think I would have I would not have minded a little bit of a larger bet there. In general, you want to be betting a little bit larger as the board becomes more draw heavy, and there were a lot of draws available. Very often, Igor is checking with a marginal showdown value hand.
It's a bit loose, but fine with antes.
Kind of a wide open by Dominik, but fine if no one's going to mess around with you. And there seems to be very little messing around so far.
He mentioned the ante.
Sorry, we're getting a bit short here, so might as well raise.
Is this a raise you might not make with antes under the gun 6-handed? If antes were out of play in the sort of early phases of a tournament?
Yeah, in general, I'm not raising that. I mean, I'm probably not even raising that in most games here. Maybe he doesn't think the players are going to get it too out of line, so the worst thing that happens is you get called. Or your opponent's 3-bet you with...
hand, most likely.
Or your opponent 3-bets you with a very strong range and you can just easily fold. So maybe that's what he thought he was against. You don't want to be opening if you're going to be getting 3-bet at every hand by a difficult to play against range, though. So now Guo's probably going to 3-bet this. I don't hate a call, because whenever you call here, you keep Igor in with a lot of hands that you dominate, whereas when you 3-bet, you make a lot of hands that you dominate fold. Like right here, notice Dario and Dominik both had King X that would have called the initial raise, and that would have allowed them to put money in the pot, drawing pretty thin from out of position. And by 3-betting, you make them fold.
Igor flats the 3-bet and flops pretty big here.
I mean, obviously, if you're calling with this, it makes your 3-betting range very tiny, but first position and second position 6-handed, it's fine to just be kind of tight versus the initial opener. So you can justify calling with stuff like aces and ace-king in that spot. Interesting bet by Guo. I'm sorry, not necessarily. I'm sorry. I was thinking of my pre-flop raise call. Fine bet by Guo. And Igor does like to just call. Check, check, turn. And now Igor is going to feel inclined to bluff, but I'm not sure he's going to be able to get Guo off of ace high with a bluff. Like, this is a spot where if Guo is going to call every time with ace high, you just don't want to bet. Guo probably realizes that this ace high is effectively the bottom of his range, so he probably should fold it to a bet sometimes. But
do you think that's a hand that Igor could have played a bit more aggressively to take the hand away from Guodong?
Well, knowing what Guo had, of course he could have, but that's not really how poker works, because...
See if I'll end up playing this or not. Okay.
We'll talk about
Allen.
that hand in a minute.
Allen.
Tell us why, Dominic. Tell us why.
Okay, check.
Yeah, 'cause he's going to flop middle pair. That's why.
I do a lot of checking.
Interesting, he says he does a lot of checking here. It's not going to work out this time.
I keep checking.
As the board gets a little bit nastier with overcards, Dominic should certainly continue checking, because now if he bets and gets called, he's often not loving it. But if he checks and it gets checked down, he probably has the best hand. So Igor is almost certainly going to bet here, and I'm interested to see what Dominic does. Because,
I call one street.
yeah, I think he has to stick around at least once. And then maybe again on this. So this is a cool river, because Igor should
Interesting
probably...
card. Check.
Well, Igor should probably raise a lot of his aces pre-flop, so you can really discount that. So if Igor bets again, it looks pretty bluffy.
This is a spot where he doesn't have an ace.
Yeah, which is what I just said, right?
Yeah, I'll call.
And I'm not surprised at that call, because whenever he bets twice, it looks very bluffy. And very good value bet by Igor. He just put it out confidently, no problem. So well played by him. Oh, but back to what you were saying is that she'd be looking at ways that you could have won this pot. And the problem with that is that you're trying to win this versus your opponent's range. And like, imagine you just go all in pre-flop with 9-2 offsuit or anything. You're going to win the pot almost every time. But at what risk? And Igor could have won that pot, but he's just out whenever Guo has aces. And you open yourself up to losing these huge pots by playing very aggressively. And like you were saying earlier, we're really not trying to play big pots early in this game. We're waiting for other people to bust out, ideally. So you at least lock up a few points. Sorry. So I'm not sure he necessarily should have been raising there, because Guo's second position 3-betting range should be quite strong. That's what it amounts to. You're only making him fold out ace-king and ace-queen. And when he doesn't have those, you're getting it in, drawing to a flush on a paired board. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Jonathan Little in the booth, everyone. My name is Roland in the booth, Boothby. I've had a few questions in the Twitch chat regarding the previous GPL commentators. You saw Griffin Benger and Sam Grafton take us through the first 8 weeks of studio action. Those guys have chosen to, focus on their poker playing for the next month or two. We saw Griffin Benger go deep in the World Series of Poker main event. He's waiting to play the final table, the October 9, as they're calling it. And Sam Grafton, has also decided to focus on his poker. But you've got myself, Ronan, in the booth, Boothby. I'm here. I'm a member of the team here at the GPL. This is Las Vegas moneymaker Jonathan Little, as you probably know.
Well, I'm excited to see Scott Ball later today take us from last place to next to last place.
Are you going to be impartial, Jonathan? That's the question. The impartiality of the commentator is a key factor here at the GPL. We can't allow any favoritism in the booth. Looks like we're going to be getting Liv Boeree on camera pretty shortly. Probably why Dominik Nitsche has disappeared briefly. As we see Igor Yaroshevsky kick things off with a pair of aces.
Hey, Liv may find herself out on this hand. You better be careful. Gut shot and a backdoor flush draw. Oh my God, Liv has it. She has it all. Even though she has a good draw here, I think this is probably going to be a fold to a bet. And the reason for that is that a 10, while it does give you a straight, it also makes ace-king into a straight and king-9 into a straight.
Hey, Liv.
It's going to call because he's going to check back a lot on the turn if his hand, if he was full of shit.
Liv correctly lets go the 9-8.
So I wonder if Liv was planning to bluff the river if the turn checked through. I assume she probably was. But I don't necessarily think that Igor is not continuing to bet the turn with a bad queen or a jack. I think he's often going to be checking in that spot. In which case that may induce Liv to make a bluff that's not going to work on the river. You got to be careful floating from out of position. Is what it amounts to, because it's very easy for your opponent to check back the turn and then call every river, or the majority of the rivers. And of course, sometimes you get paid when you get there, but when you don't, your opponent looks you up, no problem. But like Liv said, if he has nothing, he's also going to give up too. So maybe it's just fine. So Igor's probably going to bet this. I don't hate a check back in this spot, though, on the flop, because you're not concerned with any turn cards. But whenever it's possible for your opponent to have a gut shot, as it is here, notice Queen 10, Queen Jack, Jack 10 all have gut shots, you probably want to go ahead and make a bet. Just because there's a lot of hands that can call you. Notice Igor is actually running into time bank trouble. I don't think anyone's had time bank trouble yet. He's down to 5 minutes, whereas everyone else has 10.
Yeah, time bank trouble's pretty rare on the GPL, guys.
It's rare, but I mean, we're still 6-handed, and he's already burned up. What do they start with? 12 minutes
12
or 15 minutes? So he's burned a pretty significant amount, and I don't like. This is a spot where you just don't want to burn it. Igor does elect to check, notice, and that's something that a lot of people do not do. But I think it's a pretty sweet play, especially if you think your opponent's going to either overvalue their hand or try to bluff you off of your obvious pocket jacks or your obvious pocket fours or your obvious ace queen. This could be a pretty well. I think this is a pretty interesting spot because Dario may bluff on this river because obviously he can't win if it checks. But at the same time, is Igor ever folding an ace? And I don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah, nice river instincts again from Dario there. Has he? Okay, he elected to check.
Yeah, he checked. Don't go all in, Dario.
For those wondering, if and when Igor Yaroshevsky's time bank runs out, he will be placed in what we call the hot seat here at the GPL. He will have 4 seconds to act should his time run down.
It's actually kind of punishing because if you run out of time, it means you're playing slow, which almost implies you cannot make a decision in 4 seconds. So I think that they should make the time, the hot seat, 6 or 8 seconds because, if you have a problem typing on your computer or whatever, you need a little bit of extra time.
Well, the 4 second hot seat did it.
I think I'd fall there against the cutoff one time. Not happy about it.
Why are we doing 4 seconds?
Well, the 4 seconds is something that attracted a lot of discussion during the
first
first.
thought. Alex is going to get 4 on street. Check.
I would also be interested to see if Dominik elects to bet this river if the turn checks through. I'm always interested to see how some of the best players in the world play. Because some players bluff the spot very frequently, and some players check the king high.
I do have quite a lot of bluffs here, so I think we're just going to overbet this river. A little bit of tanking. Maybe. Yeah, I like an overbet, yeah.
Snap fold there from Alexandre Luneau.
So the question there is, will that make Luneau fold out a jack or an ace? And if it does, then the bluff is sweet. And if it does not, well, then the bluff is probably no good. But most likely, coming from Dominik, it was just a really sweet bluff.
Raised with ace-5 there for Alexandre Luneau. Back to the hot seat. Yeah, the issue of the hot seat did attract some discussion. There were a lot of people. Yeah. Hey, Liv.
And just briefly look around at the chip cards across the entire table. I was going to 3-bet.
Dario, all in.
So Dominik mentions a 3-bet there. Well, here we have some all-ins.
That would have been terrible timing.
Queen or ace needed for Dario.
Curious to see what Alex
Kings could hold here.
open there.
King on
King's
the
hold
river.
for Igor.
Igor.
We're going to see the early departure of Dario Sammartino, our runner-up finisher in the opening game. Big fat donut for Dario. I'll be disappointed there. That was a bit of a standard spot. We hadn't lost a player right up to the 306 level, 600 level in this second Eurasian 6 max.
Did Igor just find more time?
So the time is redistributed once a player busts among the remaining players, which makes it even more difficult to. So the time where we most commonly see players running down, it will be in where we don't lose a player for a little while, which has been the case in this match.
Oh, I see. So it's really hard to get in time bank trouble if they just keep giving you a minute or two every time someone busts.
It's very difficult to run down.
Gotcha. So I was getting afraid for no reason.
Cowboys for Guodong. Sitting on a pretty nice stack of 33,000.
So remember how I said I would really love to see him come out of the gate with some bluffs? This is where he's going to get punished for not doing that. Because he's going to 3-bet this, and they're going to give him so much respect because he's played only 2 or 3 hands throughout this entire time. But if he was getting really out of line, it wouldn't have worked out here, but imagine Igor sitting here with ace-jack. Maybe he just pays him off every time. Whereas with a lot of hands like that, he may fold if Guo's been incredibly tight, as he has been.
Ooh, okay, pretty good hand here.
There's 4
And
pretty
Igor
good hands.
open. We're not going to 3-bet, we're just going to call.
Notice Dominik not saying he's not going to be 3-betting versus the under-the-gun raise. Because people who open from early position, even the hijack seat 5-handed, tend to have relatively strong ranges, and you can close the action and not get blown off your hand. Also notice here, Dominik doesn't want to play a big pot versus Igor because Igor can bust him. He'd much rather play a big pot with these smaller stacks. So Liv was probably going to shove over the under-the-gun.
Jam, because I'm only getting caught by hands that are crushing me most of the time. The best case is that I'm folding.
So good fold by Liv. And now what does Dom do? Wow, what a bad
Folds
spot.
a fair bit, but
Nah, just
don't
fold, just
particularly
fold.
want to bust fifth.
I feel
Playing
like that
tight.
fold's pretty understandable. Alexandre Luneau hasn't really got out of line.
Wow, Igor calls the 3-bet, no problem. I'm a little surprised at that. From out of position versus the shortest, or one of the short stacks, I would imagine Luneau just must have a pretty good hand. And King Jack, I was actually going to say that I would not be shocked if he folded it pre-flop, because he doesn't want to go broke before Liv. But he gets after it, and it looks like it's going to work out okay. You can see their winning percentage at the bottom. I'm very surprised he didn't bet that flop. That's the flop where you want to
No.
bet.
I would have made the nuts.
This is a flop where Igor should have something a lot of the time, and your King Jack is probably good enough to play for stacks. And you really don't want a queen or a 9 or an 8 or an ace to peel off on the turn, or even a heart's not. Heart's not so bad because you have the king of hearts, but it's not amazing. So interesting line by Luneau. Maybe it's going to get a bet out of Igor, though. So if Igor pays here, I mean, to be fair, Igor would have paid on the flop. But if Igor pays this river,
Hi, Twitch.
Wow.
bottom of the range, check raise again.
Hello.
Liv's paying attention to her camera and not the action. Hello, Liv. We see you. So Luneau has got himself in a tough spot by playing this hand tricky. Remember, he could have just gotten it all in on the flop and been happy enough. And now by taking this line, he's opened himself up to getting exploited by Igor, because Igor probably thinks Luneau has a bad ace at best. Well, a bad ace, meaning ace-queen at best. And notice ace-queen loses ace-10, ace-jack, ace-8, ace-king. So very, very tough spot for Luneau, and I think he probably just has to fold. The problem is that which value hands would Igor check 3 times? Kind of hard to come up with too many value hands he's going to slow play to death. But if you've watched the Global Poker League, a lot of the best players in the world are very happy to check to the river to get in that river check raise, especially with these stack sizes, because they only need their opponent to put in 1 bet.
What are the specific hands that Igor could be representing here? Are there any hands that strike you as probable on that taking that line?
Well, king queen makes a lot of sense, right? Because he would raise king queen, call a 3-bet, check flop. Flop went check check. Turn, he turns the nuts. He's expecting Luneau to bet the turn. So check on the turn. River, he's thinking, well, if I bet this, he's probably only going to call with a good ace. So you check the river, and you also give Luneau a chance to bluff.
Kappa for Liv.
So interesting. I mean, king queen is a hand that just makes a ton of sense, right?
I knew you'd find one, Jonathan.
Well, that's the one that makes the most sense. I think the sets, fall into that.
Set of 5s, perhaps?
Yeah, that falls in. Well, I'm not sure he's calling the 3-bet with the set of 5s, but he did call with 9-8 suited, so maybe he does just call the 3-bet very wide there. So Liv probably just has to go all in, but she may decide to 3-bet small or
I
call.
almost tempted just to flat this against Guo, because he likes to do funny bluffs, but
Does Guo call here?
he's opening early.
No.
He's got a strong hand enough.
I mean-
Come on, buddy, call.
Liv's been
Yeah,
somewhat
it's going to make the call. Kings against 6s here. Safe.
The one time to call is when you think Liv is shoving very wide, but I'm not so sure that's the case.
It's going to double here, barring a 6.
E.
Diamonds.
Double up.
There you go, folks. Live Boeree up to 28,000.
So the reason you don't want to necessarily call there with hands like 6s, 5s, 4s, 3s, 2s, and also hands like ace 10 and king jack is because they're either flipping versus Liv's hand or they're dominated by Liv's hand. And you don't want to be flipping or dominated. You want to be dominating or flipping. So you have to be careful with the small pairs, the ace X and the king
Big 3x.
with another big card. So notice here, Dominik doing exactly what he did in the previous game
Nitsche.
of 3-betting with a pretty wide range. Applying a lot of pressure to the equal stacks in this spot. And this is really how you take over the game. And he did it here not even as the big stack. In the previous game, he did it as the big stack, and it feels less risky. But we see he's very capable of it here in this situation as the middle stack. Let's see if Igor gets after it. I think 9-2 is probably not quite good enough, but he's not necessarily playing his hand here. He's playing his position. And the fact that if Dom wants to shove, that's a lot of chips to shove. So Dominik's forced to call with a pretty good hand, and now play out of position where he's
Check
going.
all your ones.
Now he's forced to play out of
Just
position.
once.
Dominik with the 6% by virtue of having the ace of hearts in his hand.
Oh no!
And now
That's a disastrous turn card, Dominik.
So notice here though, if Igor bets small on the turn and small on the river, Dominik's just going to call, I imagine, and he has some opportunity to not get stacked here. But Igor's better than that. He's making the bigger bet to the point where he's going to be able to shove the river. You always want to size your bets such that you can put your opponent in by the river. And like Dom said, he's just never folding. Notice Igor left Dom with a nice 2/3 pot bet on the river to make him feel very roped in with all of his reasonably good value hands. So the flush got there on the river, but I don't think that should scare Igor.
I can't fold. Nice hand.
Juicy.
And good game.
There it is, guys.
Yaroshevsky.
Nice
Well, we
hand.
are laddering.
Lathering.
Well,
Lathering's a fun word.
lathering is certainly a fun word.
One of my favorite things to do is to sit in the bathtub, get lathered up, and watch the Global Poker League.
That's annoying.
If Liv was in the bath, she could be lathering and laddering at the same time, which is something that you are unlikely to do simultaneously very often.
I thought about playing one of the games from the bath because I sit in the bath sometimes, but I've yet to do that.
Well, I mean, even for me as a viewer of the GPL during the first segment, one of the more interesting things was to see the sort of the where each player was playing from and get a sort of kind of view into their lives. And you in the bath would have been something that definitely would have pulled in the viewers, Jonathan.
Well, of course. The problem is that if you start in the bath and then you lose, that's just not good. So you have to know you're going to win. And against these fields, I'm not confident I'm going to win.
Well, yeah, and if you start in the bath and you get kind of excited by pick up a big pair and your laptop could go sprawling into the lather.
Hopefully there's enough lathering going on to where there's a big pile of bubbles and it'll just float right on top of the bubbles. So you can drop your computer into the tub and it'll be okay. So notice here, Igor with the big stack now is really applying pressure to Guo because
Wow.
Luneau is
saw that hand
pretty
between
short.
Igor and Alex Luneau earlier. Igor had 8-9 and just check raised the river.
Yeah, Igor's sick. You don't want to play with Igor.
Check jammed. With turning an 8 or a 9 into a bluff. Sicko.
Yeah, Igor's really firing in this game. I don't know what changed between the game 1 and game 2. We're certainly seeing a new side to Igor Yaroshevsky, and this guy's certainly got some moves in his armory.
What's changed is he has chips now, and he can apply pressure to these small stacks. And we saw that from Dominik in the first game. He was applying pressure to the small stacks, and Igor has took that position in this game, and he's making the most of it. Notice, I mean, he's in great shape to just win this table while we're sitting here three-handed. So he's in fantastic shape.
It's worth pointing out, guys, the first two players we've lost here are the 1 and 2 finishing players from the first game. Especially Jonathan, well, myself in particular, made great kind of predictions for these two. They probably were on paper the two strongest players, but it shows card distribution is certainly a very important factor in the game of poker.
Well, to be fair, Dom ran into it with his spot where he had ace jack versus the 9-2, and he made top river or turn top pair versus bottom trips, so that was pretty much a setup. And a lot of people think that the best players in the world are good at making huge laydowns, but really they're not. You don't make money by folding big hands.
Nope.
Unless they know their opponent's really tight. And Igor is definitely not tight.
Follow us on Twitter, guys, at GPL. Don't forget to use the hashtag GPL to join in the conversation. Let us know what you think of the stream. Let us know what you think of the analysis. If you've got anything to ask my co-commentator here, Mr. Jonathan Little of the Las Vegas Moneymakers, fire away.
I'm on Twitter at Jonathan Little. They can tweet directly to me.
We've already asked him his views on blockers. I'm sure Jonathan would love to give his 2 pence worth on any subject that you feel like you need enlightening upon.
Let's take a look.
Definitely make an argument for doing the old limp jam
Let's see if Igor shoves
against
this.
Igor, but I'm not getting, he's not calling off that often.
Folds. Yeah, I think limping definitely would have been better, as Liv said. Because if she limps, Igor could very easily raise or shove based on Luneau's very short stack. Spencer asked me, at what age did I start playing live poker? Well, I was 21 when I first started. That's the lowest age you can legally play in America. I maybe played 1 or 2 home games when I was 20, but I started online when I was 18 and got right into live poker as soon as I could. My first trip was to Tunica, Mississippi. They don't play much poker there anymore, though.
I think that the World Series of Poker circuit still goes down to Tunica. But,
yeah, so my first trip there, they had the World Series, a poker circuit, and a World Poker Tour event at casinos that were 5 minutes from each other. So it was like a huge poker thing there. They both had 5 or 10K main events, and all of them had 20 preliminary events. It was a lot of fun. Now they have 1,500. So poker's changed a bit in Tunica, unfortunately.
Then you started winning kind of 1 WPT a year for the next couple of years.
Well, yes. I decided to stop, though. That was the problem. So we lost Liv, but maybe she'll come back.
Well, you're in a pretty exclusive group of 2-time WPT winners. And only 4 guys have won 3.
Yeah, I thought I was going to win 3 a time or 2, but didn't get there.
Do you know the 4? Do you know the 4 who've won 3?
What, do you know the answer?
I do.
Well, let's see. We have Carlos Mortensen.
We do.
We have Anthony Zeno.
Absolutely.
Also Las Vegas Moneymaker.
Really annoying.
I'm sure I know the other ones. Oh, Gus Hansen.
Absolutely.
Searching for one more. It was probably recent. Maybe not. I'm going to sit here and think about this as we continue to play.
Okay.
Let me know
if you're ready for a clue, Jonathan.
A clue.
I feel like the clue I have in my head is going to be slightly on the easy side. I need a clue or you're not going to get it straight away.
Yeah, so you think of your clue, and I'm going to
you
think
can
of
think of the answer.
So here Igor raises and Luneau shoves. This is probably close to a call for Igor, but kind of going back to what I was saying earlier about the pocket sixes call by Guo, this is a hand that's going to be dominated very often, and again, it is. Normally you don't expect your 9 to be dominated, but you do expect the king to be dominated a pretty good amount of the time. And as you see, he has a whopping 25% equity when they get it all in pre-flop. All right, give me a clue.
Okay, the only clue I can really give you, which may make your life kind of easier. A player who's won 3 WPTs, you probably wouldn't expect to be in this player's financial position.
Chino.
You got it.
And it was a recent one. I knew it would be a recent one. I mean, for all we know, he's rich now.
Well, he may be. I mean, there's always memes flying around of cues behind him at the cash desk whenever he does get a big score.
One thing about him is I do think he tries his best to pay back. I've known a few people who he has owed, and he's always doing his best with it.
Yeah, I guess some people just don't have money to pay people back when they owe it.
Yeah, try to not take loans from people. I think that's very good advice. I mean, like I do not give loans and I do not take loans. And sometimes you find yourself a little bit short on money and you have a few people who can effectively front you, but don't do loans. That's a big issue. Just don't give them. If you don't give them, you never have to deal with this. Here we have Igor on Skype. Oh my God, he's showing us all of his Nash charts. This is scary. This is scary.
I have to win that game.
I have to win.
Because Anatoly tell me I have to win.
I have to win. Ladies and gentlemen, Igor Yaroshevsky. Why were we holding him back? Mutiny.
I need to bet.
All right, so here we have Liv limped from the button with King 10 offsuit. We should probably pay attention to the game and not look at all the amazing charts we have in front of us. So check on the flop. Guo bets turn, and I guess Liv just has to fold. I mean, this is just... It's so easy for Guo to have something. So the question is, can Liv attempt to bluff with this? And I don't think she needs to.
Yeah, well, John, further to our previous conversation about loans, when the when the GPL fulfills its ambition to sportify poker, loans will be a thing of the past. Once poker's fully sportified,
I sure hope so.
I mean, all the money will come from Nike.
That'd be nice. You know someone at Nike? So
Yeah,
notice Liv.
I've heard they're big fans of the GPL. Hey, Nike.
Notice Liv is using
I've got some space for a tick on my lapel.
It's nice and cheap.
So notice
Call
Liv
my
is
agent.
using a limping strategy here, which is very interesting with her stack size.
Good luck us.
I would probably have just limped in Guo's spot because when you raise from out of position, you're often forced into continuation betting on a lot of flops. And I don't think Liv is folding to a 2.5 big blind raise very often because she's getting great pot odds. I think you could probably just limp in Guo's spot. But then again, he has been pretty snug, so maybe expected to get a lot of credit.
Oh my God.
And Liv accurately
You
assesses.
really have to have that God.
Yeah, the ace is horrible for her. Every other card is pretty great.
Igor Yaroshevsky, multi-tabling with Tinder.
Check back.
I have to have you.
So Guo was in a interesting spot because he
Please
has
don't jam river.
jam Guo. Let's go. That puts Igor in a Liv.
Let's go, Guo.
It's really hard to give him credit for like ace queen, ace 10.
Wow, small bet. That's even scarier.
By checking turn. Why would you ever bet queens, jacks, 10s here? I think he does value that king, queen here. Yeah,
Because this guy
he has like ace 10.
like Joe.
Ton. So cheap though.
So this goes back to what we were saying.
Ace 7, you raise that.
So this goes back to what we were saying earlier about how whenever they're betting very small, quite often it is for value. If they're ever bluffing, you pretty much have to call like Liv did, but a lot of players are just legitimately never bluffing with that sizing in that spot. I'm not saying that's what Guo's doing, but sure it's a miserable spot to be in. And as you can see, Liv was a little bit surprised at the raise with ace-7 as well. If I was going to raise with ace-7 there, I probably would have made it bigger, because then you can make stuff like king-jack fold, and you do want king-jack folding when you're out of position.
All right, we're still alive.
All right, so Liv's down to no chips. And this is a spot where Igor is in a great
And they're probably
situation.
going with this.
Like right here, I think Guo should just fold this hand. That may seem a little bit tight, but notice if he raises, Igor can stick around and then apply a lot of pressure after the flop, or 3-bet pre-flop and put Guo in a miserable scenario, because Liv is so short. This is a tough one for Liv. I mean, I would probably fold this. Wow, 5 big blinds. What are you supposed to do with this one?
I think he's raising enough that this is still profitable to go with.
feel like Liv's going to commit the chips here.
Yeah.
The problem is that, like, in my mind, Guo should be kind of
Probably
tight.
opening Queen Jack, Jack 10, that kind of stuff. A bunch.
Yeah, I guess
Liv's
Liv's
going
right.
to need a king or a 10 here. Or
It's rare that we're in
something
terrible
funky.
shape. Okay, that's fine.
That's a
Okay,
pretty great
this
flop.
is good. Oh,
Well,
Oh, I
except
didn't
for
see the
all
two
It's
clubs.
not so great.
Come on.
Interesting flop.
Come on.
It's
Red
not,
9.
it's not the worst flop.
Red 9.
Give her the red 9.
There's the,
Come on,
red
Griffin.
Jack. We're going to lose Liv Boeree, guys.
Nice run, Liv. Two
Nice run,
solid
Liv.
performances, putting some points on the board.
Put some points on the board for London Rose. London Rose sitting second at the start of the evening on 109 points.
And here we go.
Solid
We called it.
performance.
Guo's going to win this
Oh.
game.
Guidong is on the comeback trail, folks.
So from out of position, I think Igor probably wants to be somewhat careful. Because even though he can apply a lot of pressure to Guo, Guo being in position can call and defend a pretty wide range. And there's not a whole lot Igor can really do about it beyond just apply blind aggression. And with stacks this deep, I'm not so sure blind aggression is ideal. Wow, he found a shark coming out of the wall. Look at that.
Through the window, guys, with the GPL players. That's Igor Yaroshevsky. That's his chart, and that's his shark.
Wow, that's amazing. How do I get that set up in my house?
I mean, where do you buy like half a shark, Teddy? do you think he like sawed half of it off, or do you think he just like?
Well, that's what you do.
came
You,
as, like, it was just it's a bust of a shark, really, isn't it?
you beat the shark and then you mount it on the wall. That's what he did. He killed a shark and he mounted it on his wall. That's all the good poker players he had. So Dominik has a vacuum to get the chips, and Igor mounts his prey on the wall. So,
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Igor Yaroshevsky likes taxidermy and Tinder, and pretty good at poker too. And he likes ace king suited.
very quick 3-bet from Igor here. I have not necessarily picked up on any timing tells, but I've been aware of them watching the Global Poker League because quite often these players are playing one table at a time. And when that's the case, timing tells become much more pronounced. And the reason for that is because they're often just acting as soon as they reasonably know what they're doing. And so you'll often see some players making somewhat fast decisions with their big hands. I'm not saying that's what Igor's doing, but it's something just to be aware of. And I'm not saying to stall or anything like that, but just be aware of it.
Alexandre Luneau had a pretty quiet game so far. He's seemed pretty content to ladder up the positions.
I mean, Igor should fold this, I would think. I don't know. Well, clearly he's doing something else. This is why Igor is timing down his time bank, because he's busy playing on Tinder and doing whatever else he's doing down
Thinking
there.
about his next taxidermy conquest.
Notice Guo does fold the queen jack. That's probably a good fold in that spot. Obviously, he was flipping that time, but kind of similar to his pocket sixes call earlier, he's often going to be dominated, or at least in marginal shape. We may see some fireworks on this hand, depending on how Guo plays it. It's between a shove and a 3-bet small and a call. I think all those are reasonable. Well, small
For
doesn't
the
necessarily.
3-bet big.
But I guess when I said small, I meant less than all in. 3 point something X, the initial open. And now does Igor blast it? Or does he just get out of the way? This is, again, one of those spots where you may think that Guo's getting out of line because he's trying to push you around. But with Luneau sitting there with a very short stack, you have to be at least aware of the fact that, Guo is not going to want to go broke here without a strong hand. But maybe he's just messing around. Igor, he has to consult his dream machine over there on his end to try to find the answer to this problem. And the cool thing about this is Guo has been somewhat active recently, but it's been mostly with hands. Igor may think that he is overvaluing a hand like a7 offsuit and will fold it to a shove. Not necessarily overvaluing, but 3-betting with a hand like a7. And if he's ever doing it with these bad ace X's or king X's, I would love a shove from Igor because that's going to make Guo fold out a large portion of his range. So I wouldn't hate that.
This is Alexandre Luneau really hoping for a shove from Igor.
I know seeing players tank is not the most exciting poker, but I'm really hoping to see someone on the hot seat today. Let's do it. Igor, blind out for it, or time out for us.
Every time I was trying to explain the hot seat controversy, the Liv or Dominik giving some insight into a hand, never quite got around to the drama.
Basically, no one's getting in the hot seat.
Yeah.
What it amounts to. If they redistribute the time, no one's going in the hot seat.
Yeah, I mean the hot seat was pretty unpopular during the first set of online matches.
Well, 4 seconds is. I think it was initially like 3 or something. I mean, 3 seconds or 4 seconds is quick for a lot of players.
Yeah, there was a clamour to reduce that or to increase that time, but we decided we wanted to like punish the guys who were really timing down. I wonder if this is a timeout instance here from Igor, because we have lost him on the webcam.
Well, that would be unfortunate. It's like whenever you're playing online and you're timing out, and you have like 90 seconds to get back connected before they fold your hand, and you're sitting there with the nuts like, please don't fold me. And then this is a spot where maybe Igor shoves if he gets back in time, and then he gives Guo the full double up. Whereas if he times out, he's just safe. If he knew what he was in for right now, he would just time out.
Maybe we can throw in that Ukrainian internet, number 3 behind Malta and China. I mean, he could be doing a kind of, contemplating something, very seriously. But I think this feels like a timeout, which is going to be pretty unfortunate for Igor.
Why it stopped? Am I gonna?
Someone's talking.
If Igor's timed out here, this could really damage his ability to win this game. I mean, he's in the.
All of these players, or the vast majority of these players, are very good online players, and they can play fast. I mean, here we have
Guo Dong, guys.
Wow,
ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've all been waiting for.
He looks like the boss man. Yeah, don't mess with this guy. If you're sitting playing live poker and this guy shows up, be careful. Play defensively today.
Yeah.
And like right now, it's so fun if you're in Guo's shoes. I mean, most people don't know, they've like never experienced this, but if your opponent goes into the tank for like 5 minutes and you're sitting here with a good hand, but certainly not the nuts, you're like,
Going out here, why?
Yeah.
Guo Dong already been made to sweat
here.
this out by Igor Yaroshevsky here.
Okay, because last time when I play 6 nests, I got a very awful connection, and I fold my queens heads up and fold.
Oh, so he's been doubly punished by this.
So when I see this thing happen, it's quite scary.
Look at that smile, guys. Guo Dong.
He's so happy to be here.
The new hero of the GPL.
It's good to see him.
Sure now. Come on.
Sure,
It happened to me again.
He's Skyping with the GPL saying, please don't let this happen with my ace-queen suited. Oh, this poker game's so fun. There's so many aspects to online poker that don't really happen in live poker. Like, is my internet working? Come on, internet.
Maybe Igor Yaroshevsky's tanking because he wants to see Guo Dong's hand. Thinks he can use up the 10-minute delay to his advantage.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's how that works. And if so, that's probably falls in the unethical category. Oh, getting the ninja hair down.
Not very sporty, I'd have to say.
Maybe Igor is disconnected, we're hearing. If that's the case, do we pause for him or what happens? I'd be interested to know.
Anyway, looking at the standings, so Guo Dong's going to pick up a minimum of 4 points in this game, which put the Hong Kong Stars up to 110 after his donut in the first game.
It's at least not going to let them fall down too much,
No.
if any. So that's a good way to at least maintain, especially given the fact that the first and second place from last game got the bad scores.
Yeah,
this
the
time.
pressure on the top four have eased as a result of Dario and Dominik busting in the first 2 positions here. Like, those two really would have wanted to put together a kind of succession of points.
Right. So what really happened is in these 2 matches, most of the teams are going to roughly break even. So because on average you're supposed to get, I think, 3.5 points. I think. And if that's the case, then everyone's going to be chopping it up for the most part. So lots of action, but probably not a whole lot of movement today in the Eurasia stats. I'm hoping for some movement in the American stats later because we need the Las Vegas moneymakers to get some points.
Yeah, you need to get those triple figures. 95.
95 versus a bunch of triple figures.
Anyway, guys, yeah, Igor Yaroshevsky's, well, it looks like he's acted there because he acted with 8 seconds to go as Alexandre Luneau joins us on the webcam.
Hello, Luneau.
Hello, Luneau.
I enjoyed you on this TV show. What was it called?
Nosebleed.
Nosebleed, yeah. I don't know why I can't remember that, but I really enjoyed that.
Winner of the European Poker Award.
The game is on pause for a second. They are trying to make sure we have some action, proper amounts of time. You don't want the players to blind out in the Global Poker League. It seemed kind of lame for someone just to lose because they have a bad internet.
Okay, the question I'll probably have to ask Jonathan at some point, which seems like a good spot. What's gone wrong for the Las Vegas moneymakers thus far in the GPL, and can it be turned around, or is it a case of you know, up against teams with sort of a greater collection of sort of skill sets?
I think we've generally run poorly in the six-handed games, and I think that's where a lot of the points come from in the league. You know, if you get just a few first and second places in the six-handed games, you're in great shape. And like, I know I've played 4 of them and I've had every place except for first and second. So, you know, if we play it and it averages out and I get first and second, then we're back to even and we're in good shape because the team will have an extra 12 points. And if we had an extra 12 points, we'd be right back in it. And I'm not even the worst of the concerns for the team because we've had a few of the other players who just went 0 for X in their games. Luckily, we have Scott Ball, and he has been pretty good for us.
Do you think some of the criticism that Scott Ball got before the GPL, not sort of criticism, but people, I think there were a few people who questioned the kind of the wisdom of getting a kind of a semi-professional in, you know, even you know, putting aside the kind of Twitch advantages.
Well, one issue is a lot of people did not correctly realize that Scott Ball has a lot of experience, and he is the student of a very world-class poker player, and he's been studying a ton, playing a ton online, and does really well at it. So make sure you go back and watch his games
I've seen
on
Scott
the app.
Ball.
I mean, download the Global Poker League app.
I've seen Scott Ball. Scott Ball's been one of the stars of the GPL up to now. Alexandre Luneau disappeared for a while, thinking that by the time he came back, the game would be up and running. It's not. Here we go again, guys. Don't forget to download the GPL TV app, folks, on the iOS and Android. Keep up with the GPL on the go, watching highlights, up-to-date standings, and upcoming matches. And you can also get yourself onto the merchandise store, where you can buy hoodies, T-shirts, and caps for your favourite GPL team. We are back in the action. I believe Igor Yaroshevsky will possibly be put into the hot seat. I mean, if the production crew feel that he was timed out and not using his time to his own benefit, then he might be given a reprieve. But this should change the dynamic of the game considerably if he is put in the hot seat, where he'll have 4 seconds to act.
So here we have an all-in from Luneau, and Igor just snaps him off. And so now, did these players chop up 14 minutes of time bank? Assuming Luneau is out?
Well, I think that's the way it's going to end up.
That's interesting. It's a lot of time bank to chop up. And just like that, Luneau is out.
Alexandre Luneau is going to bust in third there.
Really wishing for Igor to just be out of here. But instead he came back with 8 seconds remaining. And they do chop up 14 minutes of time bank.
That hand slightly symbolic of how this match has gone for Igor Yaroshevsky. Kind of looked like things weren't going his way. Looked like he was going to be on the shot clock, the hot seat, sorry, and came back, picked up 10s and eliminated Alexandre Luneau.
Basically times out with his ace-2, didn't get a chance to shove, and now here he is, heads up with the chip lead. So Guo is then, you know, he has it a 2-1 disadvantage, but that's actually not so bad. If you compare it to the previous game, I believe, I don't remember what happened. Dominik, I think, had a pretty nice chip lead when they got heads up. But anyway, here we have it. Let's check out these players' 25 big blind strategies. We see a limp from Guo, which is, you know, pretty nice play.
Lola for Guodong in the Twitch chat. Yabon Dragon. Guodong, you're my hero.
So Guo should definitely call here once he limps and just try to flop well in position. If he had backdoor spades or just anything else going on in this spot, he should almost certainly call. This is a pretty marginal one to call with. You do have some backdoor draws, but you have to be careful. When he does call here, he's not only calling to try to get a queen or a 9, he's often going to try to steal it on various turns. Interesting to see Igor continuing to fire. I don't think Guo's going to be the type of player to fold out middle or bottom pair. So I don't really love this bet. I think you're probably better off checking and then seeing what develops. But, you know, it's obviously good against this exact type of hand, unless we see Guo really get after it. Some players will always raise the flop with their good draws and their pairs. And against those players, you know that they do not have those hands when they call your flop bet, so that can allow you to more easily bet the turn to try to get them off of better ace highs and junkie pairs. So if he has some sort of a read on Guo, then maybe that makes his line perfectly fine and ideal. It's important to realize that various lines can be good or bad in specific spots versus specific players. There's always the idea that there's some game theory optimal line, and if you deviate from that, you're screwing up. But that's far from true in my experience, where if you know something about your opponent's play, you can take advantage of it, and you should be taking advantage of it. So here are two players.
And Igor Yaroshevsky's moved his camera. We still get shark. Don't get the wall chart.
What are you hoping comes out of the other side of his screen, on the other side? So we have a chart and a shark. What else do you want to see?
Well, on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
Something like a dead body of like the body of one of his like Ukrainian gang rivals.
Wow. Okay, that's a little bit dark. I was looking for more like
like a Hoover or something.
I was looking for like a flamingo or a bowl of spaghetti or something like that. But you want a dead human. All right.
No, I like the idea that like Igor's like just assassinated like one of his rivals. He's like, I have to go and play GPL and I have to win before I bury this body. And
show us what's on the floor.
Last time I do a Russian accent on the GPL stream.
All right, so still same stack sizes. Igor misclick folded. Because he's not folding queen 4 heads up. I don't think. Come on, Igor, tell us you misclicked. Interesting limp by Guo. I think it's fine. Wait, what's happening?
Igor was in the big blind, I think, with the deuce 4.
Yeah,
off.
but I thought Guo limped.
I think he must have min raised.
Must have min raised. Okay, maybe I just missed it.
Oh, Igor's on the move. Gonna see a bit more of a Casa Yaroshevsky.
So notice we have a limp here.
Is this a limp call, do you think? Or a limp shove?
If he gets raised, he's probably just going to call in position. It's tough to say.
25 big blinds.
Yeah, I don't think he's trying to fold.
No.
So if he gets raised, it's probably going to be a limp call. But, I mean, shoving could always just be fine, especially if you think you're getting raised very frequently. So check on the flop. Guo's just hoping to get to showdown. Poker's a lot easier. We don't have to get up and move your entire setup to a different room because your internet's not working.
Ukrainian internet. Third worst in the world.
I like that sweet statue Guo has in his room. I bet very few other Global Poker League players have a giant statue in their room.
God, I'd love his camera to move a little bit to the. Looks a little bit like Queen Victoria.
I don't think it's Queen Victoria.
I think that the chances of Guo Dong having a Queen Victoria statue in his apartment pretty slim. But I'd love to just to see.
Yeah, we need to do like a high stakes living episode or something on him where we go through his house and see what all's going on. All right, so here we have a min raise from Igor, and I imagine Guo's just going to go all in. It always feels a little bit nasty shoving with these ace-x offsuits because when you get called, you're very often behind. And when you win, it's because your opponent folds and they fold out some hand that's no good. But I do think you probably want to be shoving these just because they're not going to play so well after the flop.
Okay, pretty interesting flop here.
Like right here's an example of this where he's going to check call the flop, most likely. And then if Igor decides to get after it and bluff, Guo's just going to lose this pot. So the way...
Deuce.
Well, now he's not going to lose this pot
he's not.
unless he gets outdrawn on the river. Nadaraj says, could it be a valid strategy to deliberately time bank down to try to get other people to play wider? I don't think so. It doesn't cost the other players anything to try to just sit there. I don't think you're going to make any of these players get overly aggressive or anything like that because you are taking your time. I think no one cares. Notice here Guo check raises. I think this is a line that may work out really well versus Igor's exact hand.
Okay. If I hit 7 or deuce, I win this match. Or if not, we play.
That's a spot where Guo's not pricing out any of the draws. And if you are going to try to raise, quite often you want to raise to try to price out draws. I would love to see Guo.
Please.
I would love to see Guo check the river now because all the draws missed. And you can easily check call off because all the draws missed. If you bet, I think Igor's probably only going to be calling with an ace or maybe a great king. Or 2 pair, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a... I like Guo's idea that he has the best hand here, so he wants to get money in the pot. But when all the draws miss, quite often you can get more money in the pot by checking than you can betting. And if he's beat there, he's obviously beaten. He's going to lose the stack anyway. So you're really just trying to figure out, how do I get value out of the junky part of Igor's range? And I think there are probably a lot of busted draws there when you min raise the turn and he only calls. So 2 pretty bad hands. Let's see if Igor plays the 7-2 offsuit. He does not. One thing you will notice if you study the Global Poker League is a lot of the players do not play the absolute garbage. They just don't play it. There's no reason to play 7-2 and 8-3 and 6-2 from out of position. So have a little bit of discipline with that. Here we have a limp from Guo, who has taken the chip lead. So this is an interesting spot where I think Guo should probably just check behind and try to get to showdown. And Igor now with a pair should also be thinking the same thing. If Guo... So this is a spot where you can really adjust based on what you think of your opponent. Maybe Igor thinks that Guo always bets the flop with a jack or a 10. Therefore, his 8's effectively the nuts on the turn. And if that's the case, he can conceivably value bet. But if he thinks Guo's going to check back a lot of jacks and 10s, as many players do, well, then the 8's not so good. So you always want to be thinking, what is my opponent doing with each part of their range?
Couple of reasonable hands here. Guo done with the ace on the button. Don't forget to join the conversation on Twitter, folks. At GPL. Use the hashtag GPL. If you spot some Ghanaian football conversations, scroll through till get to the Global Poker League chatter.
For Americans, that means soccer conversations from a country in Africa.
Correct.
In case our school system failed you as they did many of the rest of us.
Africa is indeed a continent consisting of other countries.
It's not so far from Malta. I didn't realize that.
Oh yeah, I think only 200 miles you have to go to hit the Libyan coastline.
Libya is also a country.
Libya is a country in the continent of Africa.
Africa. We're learning all sorts of stuff today.
Oh yeah.
He does move the camera. Look at that boss statue. Oh my God.
Yeah, no, it's not Queen Victoria.
You don't think that's Queen Victoria?
No, it's just a Chinese statue.
Yeah, that's sweet.
What's coming off his head?
Well, I love this setup you have. This is amazing. So I would be so happy to be able to just sit in there and grind and do work and have that environment. That is fantastic. All right, Guo outflops Igor. He's probably going to be winning this pot unless something goes horribly awry. Notice here, Igor also checking behind. You'll see a lot of the good players checking behind their marginal made hands. And ace high does count as a marginal made hand. Quite often, it will go... When it goes check on the turn, the ace high is often good. But whenever you face a bet on the turn, it's usually not, so you can just easily fold. And Guo should probably just keep checking. I think Igor is probably only going to call with a better hand at this point, or maybe a 4. So I don't think there's a whole lot of value to be had. Maybe Guo goes for a small bet and hopes to get looked up, but I don't think it's going to work out. And we do see Igor fold even to the somewhat small bet. It's hard to get value out of these marginal bottom pair type hands. The best way to get value is often just to check and pray your opponent throws a bet out.
Couple of random 5s here. I expect Igor will check this in the big blind. Both players miss.
Whenever you're playing heads up, it's always important to try to figure out if your opponent has a skill disadvantage at some spot and try to get them to that spot. You'll see a lot of the very good players will just try to really see a lot of turns and rivers, for example, because they think a lot of their opponents have relatively little experience playing turns and rivers. And if you think your opponent is better than you, you should be looking to really jack up the variance, because if you can get it all in for, say, 45% equity on average, that's way better than getting to turns and rivers versus a good player where they're going to have a huge edge. So I'm not saying that's what either of these players should necessarily do, but you should always be thinking about that. So great hand for Igor, not the flop he was looking for. We may see him check behind in this spot. Although we may see a small bet, either play would be acceptable.
Keep your comments coming in on Twitch, guys. Like the stream. Subscribe to the stream if you want to really involved with the GPL.
Send comments like you enjoy the stream and you're happy to be here. So notice Igor likes to just check down. Let's see if Guo throws out a river bluff. If Guo thinks that Igor could have a lot of kings and jacks, he probably should not bet. Maybe that's the spot for a big river bet. I think that would have been pretty sweet from Guo. I don't know. He doesn't really have any relevant blockers or anything like that. That's the spot where blockers would come into play. Like say you had whatever one of the straight cards was. That would be a spot where you could conceivably throw out a bet because of your whatever, like a 10 blocker or whatever.
Probably going to see a shove here from Guo Dong.
Yeah, I like a limp shove. It's pretty strong. And one good thing about this is for Guo is that it also makes Igor way less inclined to raise his limps in the future. Once you set this dynamic to where your opponent understands that you're not only limping with garbage, then now you can't really attack them. So they can't attack your limp so hard. So now you get to see way more limped pots. If they think you're only limping garbage, though, they can just raise you and raise you and raise you, and then you don't get to see limp pots with your junky hands. If I was in Guo's shoes, I would do exactly what Igor just did to me, because maybe that will induce Igor to do something silly. But we see Igor just plays what seems to be very solid poker. So I like this a lot. But that's a pretty sweet spot to try to induce Igor to do something silly. That's a line you'll often witness.
Okay, this could be the final hand, folks. Igor, 13 big blinds. King Deuce suited in the big blind. He's going to ship it in. He's going to get a quick call from Dong Guo. Nothing there for Igor yet. Backdoor diamonds. Needs a king or a deuce. There's the jack of hearts on the turn. So barring a king or deuce, so we're going to see a maximum points here for Guo Dong after his disappointment of the first game.
Nice job, Guo. Well played and great result. Igor, you did fantastic as well. So that was a pretty fun match at the end.
That was a fun game and absolutely astronomical turnaround from the first game where we saw perhaps like the two favourites pushing through, showing their kind of, their skill. But I mean, Guo Dong there, who we spoke about in between the two games, thought he was going to be under pressure. He came out there and we saw him on the webcam. He looked pretty relaxed. Didn't look under pressure at all.
Well, he locked up some points by the time we saw him. He knows he's not going to get 6th place. And kind of as I predicted, he came out a little bit slow, didn't do anything ridiculous, did not spew his stack off, and just played kind of tight. And perhaps that cost him a little bit earlier when he had his premium hands. But, he hung around, he picked up some hands, and he finally got paid off. So it worked out really well for him.
We've got to give full credit to Igor Yaroshevsky there. Although he didn't go on to win the game, he arguably was the sort of star of that game with some of the poker we saw from him.
Yeah, he had control of the table for the most part until they got heads up. And he got heads up with a really nice chip lead. So he did all he could. And then heads up, he just was not on the right side of the hands.
Yeah, no, pretty nice. Couple of nice spots where Igor turned marginal hands into bluffs on the rivers, including the 9-8 of clubs. That was a pretty unconventional hand, sort of from start to finish. Calling the 3-bet and then choosing to turn the 8 into a bluff on the river against Luneau.
Yeah, so you always want to be observing the best players in the world play, and that's a spot where Igor realized on this river I have the bottom of my range. He wasn't thinking I have a pair or he wasn't thinking my opponent's range is strong. Well, he was thinking that, but he was mainly thinking that I have the bottom of my range. I want to be bluffing here sometimes. What are some good hands to bluff with? And hands that block three of a kind or sets, and also hands that block straights are usually pretty good candidates. So there he had a really good hand to turn into a bluff, and he did it, and it worked out amazingly well. So that was really where I think the game started turning in his favor. And then heads up, combined with the internet connection issues, were enough to do him in.
Yeah, we saw Liv Boeree there a couple of times. So she was put in a few difficult spots in both games. You kind of you sensed her frustration on the webcam. She was wasn't quite her sort of chirpiest. Tough table for her, and she found herself in a couple of spots with very marginal hands on the rivers, in particular hands getting shoved on by these guys. Do you think Liv could have done anything differently in those two games?
Well, she could have called.
She could have called.
She had, I believe, 3 spots where her opponents attempted big bluffs in just very good spots to attempt bluffs where they should have a strong range, and the board ran out pretty ugly for the majority of made hands, and Liv happened to have the majority of marginal made hands in those spots. So she happened to have the few hands that, or maybe even the majority of hands that kind of need to fold to the big bets, and her opponents were willing to pull the trigger. And as you become aware that your opponents are willing to pull the trigger, perhaps even more often than they should, that should really slam your calling range the other direction where you have to call with all sorts of stuff. But it's really, really hard to know that. And, I certainly don't fault Liv for any of those folds.
Well, that's it for the European game, guys. We're going to try a new segment tonight in between both Six Max games. Going to have a little session with Jonathan in front of the screen behind us, and we're going to analyse some of the table dynamics from those first 2 games. There you see the scores from this match. Guo Dong picking up the maximum 7 points then. Igor Yaroshevsky picking up 5. Alexandre Luneau with 3. Dario Sammartino and Dominik Nitsche in the points during game 1, failing to follow that up with any significant scoring. We're going to move to the Americas 6 Max later on today. Got Jason Mercier in action. Got 3 grills for you on the Twitch. In the meantime, we're going to go back to Laura Cornelius in the lounge.
Thank you so much, Jonathan Little and Roland Boothby there. Congratulations once again there to Guo Dong of the Hong Kong Stars, and of course to Dominik Nitsche as well of the Berlin Bears, who picked up the points in that very first 6 Max match for the Eurasian Conference as well. It was interesting to see there the Berlin Bears and the Rome Emperors doing really well in that first one, and then in the second one going out first. Anything can happen here in the GPL. Let's take a look at the standings and where that leaves some of our teams as they are right now. So as we saw, Igor Yaroshevsky doing pretty well in both of those matches. Pretty consistent. Moscow Wolverines still on top with 130 points. London Royals there. They're making a little bit more of a gap between first and second there with 113 points. Liv probably not as happy as she would have been, as she has a phenomenal track record with these 6 Max matches. We've got the Hong Kong Stars up in third now. In fact, they're tying second and third, the London Royals and the Hong Kong Stars. So Guo Dong there doing really well in being able to pick up 7 points there for Selena Lin's side, the Hong Kong Stars. But we're going to see lots more action coming your way very soon, because the Americas Conference matches will be happening very, very soon. In just around an hour's time, I believe it will kick off at 9:30 p.m. Central European time. And we've got a brand new lineup for those 2 6 Max matches from the Americas Conference. We're going to head back to the desk right now to Roland Boothby and Jonathan Little for the best hand of that match.
Thanks, Laura. Jonathan's going to take us through the big hand from that last matchup. What was the big hand for you there?
Wow, there were a few. I mean, I think the biggest hand was probably the bluff that Igor made. I mean, that was a fantastic spot where he accurately realized he had the bottom of his range, and that's certainly something you need to do. Was there any other big spots that you found incredibly interesting?
No, down a couple of hands. I wasn't sure if we're going to get the replay on screen. Let's talk a bit about what we're going to see between the games. We're going to have you on this screen. Okay,
here we go to a big hand.
When the GPL fulfills its.
So here we have a limp from Liv. Oh, this was a very important hand here, where Guo ended up running a pretty sweet play with the a7 offsuit. I mentioned here in the spot he should probably make it a little bit bigger pre-flop because he does want Liv to fold. Right here, Liv's not going to fold very often. She has to put in only 2,500 more chips to try to win the 7,000 chip pot. So she's going to stick around. And this is a spot where Liv played a little bit cautiously by just calling on the flop. And that's certainly the right play in my mind because Guo, if she raises in this spot, Guo's going to be folding all of his hands worse than a king for the most part and draws. Maybe he calls off with pocket nines or better or an 8. But she's really only worried about an ace on the turn. And as you can see, she was disgusted at the ace on the turn, and she realizes the ace on the turn is a really bad spot. And so on the turn, I believe Guo, what does he do?
I think he checks
Did
back.
he check?
Yeah, and
So,
I think he bets about a third pot on the river.
So him checking the turn puts Liv in a spot where she doesn't really know what's going on in this hand. It really confuses her because she probably assumes Guo is going to keep betting with an ace on the turn. So now, if he shoved all in on the river, I bet Liv would have folded. But when he makes this small bet, we saw this in the previous game as well, Liv now feels very inclined to call because she's getting such a good price to call. She needs to win 1 in 5 or 6 times, something like that. And will she? I mean, that's what's up for debate. So far today, we've seen, I believe, no small bets on the river as a bluff. I mean, to be fair, we've only seen 3 or 4 or 5 of them. But this is certainly a very, very difficult spot to be in. And you know, I don't falter for the call, but if you watch, I mean, I would definitely suggest all those people who are in statistics out here to watch a bunch of the Global Poker League games and see how often these small bets are actually bluffs. And if it's 1 in 30 times, well, then this is just a fold for Liv. But if it's 1 in 3 times, it's a super easy call. I think you'll see a lot of the best players in the world making this bet as a bluff from time to time. And it's important to do so, but
yeah.
Liv does look it up.
Make the crying call on the river there. She knew the turn was pretty gross for her, and that was the one of the key hands from that last six max game, guys.
Well, that took Guo from being relatively low on chips to now having a very nice chip stack.
It was a real momentum changer for Guo Dong, and we saw Guo go on to take the victory in that game. That's it for the Eurasian Conference today on this first day back at the GPL. We are going to go to Laura in the lounge to wrap things up.
Thank you so much, boys, and congratulations once again. Berlin Bears taking 7 points for their side in that first one, and the Hong Kong Stars another 7 points in that second Eurasian Conference match. As they said, we will be back here very, very soon for the first 6-max match from the Americas Conference. We've got an all-star lineup. Look at this. Jason Mercier for the New York Rounders. It's team manager Maria Ho for the LA Sunset, Kitty Kuo of the San Francisco Rush, Scott Ball for the Las Vegas Moneymakers, Juan Liu of the Montreal Nationals, and finally Byron Caverman is joining us from the Sao Paulo Metropolitans. That first heat of 2 is kicking off in just under an hour's time. It will be on your screens at 9:30 p.m. Central European time. In the meantime, don't forget your tweets in to us, and also write all your comments on the Twitch chat box as well. Head over to our website, and also don't forget to download our app on Android and on iOS and get all of the latest team merchandise that's available there. We've got hats, we've got t-shirts, and we've got hoodies. So they are all available right now. We'll be back here in an hour though. We will see you right then.
Does not, yeah, okay.
Doesn't call it off
This has got to be
either.
it. This has got to be it. Okay. This is so tough for Fabrice because this is the first time we've
Aaron's
actually seen
jammed on him.
Aaron
Yep.
jam.
And Fabrice folds.
Wow.
That's sick. Oh boy, this could get dicey in a hurry. Bottom set for Pascal, top pair for Dario. Pascal betting 1,400 into top pair. We've not seen any real coolers like this. Dario just flats. 5 on the turn, puts a second flush draw out there. Pascal bets 3,600. Seems like another spot for a just call from Dario. Calling is way standard. And a 6 on the river. So all the flop draws missed. The turn flush draw missed. couple of the turn, obviously straight draws got there, but you don't expect people are going to have those very often.
I know you are betting this.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge overbet. That's just a massive overbet, 18,000 to basically 12,000. Yeah, this is sick.
No, he's hiding his eyes.
You wanna see my end? Let's do that.
Oh god, this really boned Dario last time. He can't even keep a straight face.
And that François doing great in the cube today. That's a good fold. In just a few hours. Congratulations to him, and whatever happens, we're proud of him.
We are indeed. I've probably been playing a bit more video poker than normal poker since I've been here in Las Vegas.
Choosing to go all in here. You, of course, flopped another flush.
Obviously a flush.
Ooh, yeah, Jason might have to call here. He might have no choice but to call. Wow, fantastic fold. Chance went a few years without any major scores and then really made a comeback, Joe. In July 2014, basically the last day of the main event, he actually won the Bellagio Cup. $526,000, Sorel Mitzi finished 5th, and since then, the career is right back on track. Ton of big scores, including, of course, 2016, which has been a career year for him already.
The Bellagio Cup comes in very handy for when you accidentally flop your nuts.
Aye.
Speaking of hands that could be painful, Jack 6, 2 pair here for Walter. Top pair, very good kicker for Chance.
Yeah, despite a big misstep in this game, Walter still has the lead and could be about to take an even bigger chunk of the chips. And he does.
Big fold.
And Fabrice has caught 2 pair. 44.